Welcome, everybody. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Greg Mezzi.
Present.
Veronica Pillar. Lee Shurtleff.
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Present.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Shauna Black has asked to be excused. Dan Klein.
Here.
Veronica Pillar. 12 members present.
We have a quorum. Next up is presentation of proclamations, petitions, communications, and notices. And we are going to start with recognition for the I Voted sticker contest. Whereas the Tompkins County Board of Elections held its first annual I Voted sticker design contest in 2023, and whereas the contest was open to Tompkins County youth in grades 5 through 12 and received 8 submissions from students attending New Roots Charter School, Lehman Alternative Community School, Ithaca High School, and Dryden High School, and whereas over 2,100 votes were cast for the top sticker design, and whereas Dakota Singh, a recently graduated senior from New Roots Charter School, submitted the winning design for the 2023 I Voted sticker contest, and whereas Singh's design featured a cat in a field of flowers, will be printed on 30,000 I Voted stickers by the Board of Elections and distributed to Tompkins County voters in the 2023 general election. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature recognizes Dakota Singh as the winner of the inaugural 2023 I Voted sticker contest. Dakota, do you want to come on up?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. We also have the election commissioners here. Do you guys want to come up also? Steve DeWitt and Alana Congdon. So, do a quick photo. Smile, smile, smile. This is for you. If you'd like to say something, I'll push it out. Absolutely.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to thank Benjamin Lawrence. He is my participation in government teacher, and he recommended that I try out for this because I've always been fascinated by government and politics. So thank you very much, Benjamin, for having me do this. Thank you.
All right, next up we have a proclamation, Disability Pride Month proclamation, and this is going to be read by Veronica Pillar, Chair of the WDIC Committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klein. Acting Chair, I don't know.
I don't know either.
All right. Whereas nearly all people will be disabled in some way at some point in our lifetimes, and whereas 27% of Americans report having some type of disability that causes serious difficulty in their daily lives, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, with many additional Americans living with disabilities of a type or severity not covered by the CDC's survey. And whereas disabled people have historically been excluded from public spaces by physical inaccessibility, forced institutionalization, medical eugenics, and more, and disabled people continue to be excluded today through a wide range of physical, procedural, societal, institutional, and systemic barriers. And whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, which forbids discrimination on the basis of disability and mandates certain accessibility measures in public places, remains a monumental victory for inclusion and accessibility since its hard-won passage in 1990. However, ADA requirements often do not go far enough for many people's bodies and minds, and the ADA lacks any enforcement mechanism, leaving it up to those facing exclusion and discrimination to file complaints and lawsuits. And whereas people receiving governmental disability benefits frequently cannot marry, run for public office, or exceed poverty levels of wealth or income without losing their health care. And whereas disabilities can take countless forms, including mobility limitations, chronic illness, blindness, deafness, immunosuppression, neurodivergence, psychosis, chronic pain, traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, and many more. Disabilities can be acute, chronic, or permanent. They may arise alone or in any combination, and they may be consistent or unpredictable in severity. And whereas disabled people are the experts on their own needs and abilities, and the disability community is extraordinarily creative, flexible, inclusive, respectful, generous, and communal in caring for themselves and each other. And whereas to achieve true accessibility for all people with and without disabilities, we must dismantle not only the barriers that exclude people based on disability, but also those that exclude people based on race, gender, class, sexuality, citizenship, religion, and more, as these systems are inherently intertwined. And whereas, while recognitions such as Disability Pride Month are valuable, it is much more important to expand access to public spaces, both through specific accommodations such as smooth wheelchair ramps, visual and audio alternatives for communication, redundant transportation networks, and communicable disease mitigation measures, and through a collective understanding that there is no such thing as a normal body and that access for one improves access for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature does hereby proclaim the month of July 2023 as Disability Pride Month in Tompkins County, and together with our entire community, we celebrate and honor every single person's unique needs, strengths, and value, and we strive to dismantle all barriers to inclusive access for all.
Thank you, Veronica. And I think we have Tracy Decker here to receive this proclamation on our screen on Zoom. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Tracy Decker, Chief Operations Officer at Finger Lakes Independence Center. Thank you so much for recognizing this month. And in case people didn't know, it's the 33-year anniversary of the ADA this month. So we are thankful for the recognition and continue to serve people in our community who have disabilities. And we'd invite anyone next Friday, July 28th. We're having a celebration here at the Finger Lakes Independence Center from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So please feel free to stop by. We'll be having cake and some prizes, and we've got a few new staff to meet. So yeah, we'd love to see you all. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you very much, Tracy. All right, next up is something that's not printed on the agenda. The clerk of the legislature has requested to speak regarding the confirmation of the appointment of a deputy clerk.
Good evening. I just wanted to let everyone know that my staff and myself recently conducted a search for a deputy clerk, and I'm delighted to let everyone know that we have found someone that we believe is going to complete our team, and we have offered the position, and it has been accepted by Jordan White, and she is here tonight and was here earlier to meet everybody. And in accordance with the charter, the legislature is required to confirm this appointment, so I'm asking for confirmation tonight.
Is there anybody who would like to move the confirmation? Amanda?
Yes, I would move to confirm the appointment of Jordan White to the position of Deputy Clerk of the Legislature.
Thank you. Is there a second? Greg Mezzi seconds. Thank you. Sure.
I would like this appointment to be effective July 24th.
Good. Okay, we are all present in the room, then we can vote by, yeah. So all in favor of this confirming this appointment? Very good. That is unanimous. Jordan, welcome aboard, and you want to come up and say hi and say whatever else you want? I don't know if you knew that was part of the bargain.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan, and I am very excited to get to work.
Okay. So we will have an executive session tonight. There are 2 items to deal with. One is a real estate transaction, potential real estate transaction, and one is contract negotiations. And then as far as reordering of business, I was thinking about moving Resolution R up to after our presentation from TC3. There are a number of people here to speak about it tonight, both online and in person. So are there any objections from legislators to reordering that business? Mike?
No objection, but
Yes.
I wondered, are we going to move the TC3 presentation up as well?
Before privilege of the floor?
I would think so.
Does anybody have any objections to that? Ann?
There's an event that I believe several of the speakers need to go to that starts at 6:30. So I'd prefer that they have time to speak.
Okay, we'll keep with the order that we have on the agenda. So we are up to privilege of the floor for the public. Let me read the rules of speaking here. Rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring to another person is not permitted. I agree that if I cause a disruption and I'm asked to leave, I will leave chambers. So with those rules in mind, first up is Joseph Kreitzinger. All right, A+ for my first try. If you would come up to one of the microphones, please.
Okay, I'll use this one. Hi.
And we have the clock up here that runs the 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. So, hey, I want to thank you all for letting me speak today. I'm Joe Kreitinger, and I'm actually an environmental toxicologist that's been living here in Ithaca for the last 32 years or so. But I've spent almost 35 years of experience working with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and various state agencies in the Great Lakes, and in addition to working in the private sector. So I'm here to talk about the Seneca Meadows landfill in the upcoming resolution that you guys are going to vote on, I guess, eventually. And let me just say, I'm a science and engineering guy, so I'm not a schmoozer and and a mover and a shaker. So forgive me if I get a little nervous. And then let me just say that I've worked with engineers my entire life, and as an environmental toxicologist, I like to joke around and say that my job has been to keep the engineers out of trouble. So in any case, and I'm not going to make a statement for or against the Seneca Meadows landfill expansion permit. And I don't feel qualified to do so, given the social and economic impacts of that permit, and they're really beyond my area of expertise. However, I do want to provide information that supports the science and engineering-based decisions that are going to be required to protect the county's water resources, the human health, and also there's financial liability involved too, which I want you to think about and consider. Anyway, there's a handout that I gave everyone with maybe a more technical graphic image than you want to look at, but this is what I'm speaking to, and it's a complicated subject, and I have very little time to discuss it. So the first point I'd like to make is that regardless of the treatment process that's ongoing at Seneca Meadows landfill, there's always secondary waste streams that impact human health and the environment. And then the second issue that's really important is that the treatment of these secondary wastes, when they're spread out geographically, using other private companies, municipal wastewater treatment plants, or private landowners, also spreads out the risk, not only to human health, but also the financial liability that's associated with these secondary wastes. So I just want you all to be very careful in your consideration.
You nailed it on the 3 minutes.
Oh, what's that? Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
perfect.
you said you were going to give me 2 more minutes.
I don't think I said that. Okay, next up is Brian Eden.
Good evening. I hadn't anticipated being here so soon after some other appearances here, but first, I am going to speak in support of the Seneca Meadows resolution. I'd like to reflect on recent climate change developments, global extreme heat records broken, numerous intense storms, and smoke from 800 Canadian forest wildfires. As a member of the EMC and now the Climate and Sustainable Energy Advisory Board, I have spoken over the past 15 years in public meetings and to municipal boards about the existential threat of climate change and its potential environmental, economic, social, and public health impacts. My sense is that I was perceived much like the iconic bearded person wielding the sign, the end is near. You know, that's how I perceive myself as I walked out of each of these meetings. Our work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is becoming more successful, but slowly, and is it too little too late? On a matter that may not be too late, I wish to focus on Resolution R tonight, which I hope may initiate a much-needed discussion concerning our growing exposure to emerging toxins, including PFAS in Cayuga Lake water. CLEAN was formed in 2017 with a primary mission to preserve the ecology and water quality of Cayuga Lake. Only 0.5% of the world's water is fresh water, and 70% of that is frozen in ice sheets. Fresh water is becoming increasingly contaminated, much of that from point sources such as sewage and wastewater treatment plants. We are extremely fortunate to inherit the critical life-supporting values provided by Cayuga Lake, and we hopefully will not squander this beneficence through inattention. Why is the Seneca County landfill a matter of concern for our Tompkins County Legislature? The Finger Lakes region is the location of New York's State's 3 largest solid waste landfills, Seneca Meadows, Ontario, and High Acres. Much of this waste is shipped from more industrialized areas downstate. These landfills all produce ample quantities of leachate that must be treated before discharge to the environment. And these are trucked to publicly owned wastewater treatment plants. Many of these toxic materials are also endocrine disruptors. EDCs are chemicals and mixtures of chemicals that can enter the body through the skin, breathing, or drinking water, and are retained when they bind with steroid hormone receptors to have effects on male and female reproduction and many cancers. I'm also the chair of the Tompkins County Hillview Road Landfill Citizens Advisory Committee. We've had 30 years of excellent collaboration with the county staff. County staff recently approved having PFAS tested in our Hillview Road landfill on and samples were taken on June 14th. So we need to push toxic waste back up the chain to their sources and not provide a safety valve by allowing their discharge to our freshwater bodies and spread across the landscape. With an eye to protecting our future local quality of life, I hope that you agree with these topics are ripe for robust and transparent discussion. Please support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Zach Wynn.
Good evening. My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in the city, and I'd like to bring to the legislature's attention a number of recent incidents. This morning saw the burglary of One Stop Kick shoe store on Cayuga Street. It has become evident that one or more burglary crews are operating in the area, with 3 burglaries that occurred within an hour's time having taken place on the 8th. Also, an out-of-state unregistered sex offender from Virginia was found to have been living in the jungle encampments. I have a few questions that incident brings to mind, such as how long has he been here? Why did he choose to come to live in the jungle? And who else is living in the jungle? At this month's meeting of the Ithaca Common Council, Councilperson McGonigal described human trafficking, violence, theft, and other activities like routine, systematic burglaries of businesses in the West End, emanating from the area behind Agway and Warehouse Carpet Outlet in Jungle Number 1. People who were connected to the jungle are missing, in at least one case presumed by police to have been murdered. Several sitting members of Common Council have voiced objection to any police involvement in enforcement of the city's proposed ban on unsanctioned encampments. Circumstances demand a more immediate response than what the city and the county can provide. During the recent visit, I was able to speak with Assemblywoman Kellis and State Senator Webb. They are both aware of the city's crisis in the jungle and seemed as eager as anyone to see it addressed. I request the legislature reach out to New York State to seek an intervention into this crisis, as it is clear none will be forthcoming from the city of Ithaca. Webb and Kellis, could help the city and the county seek a resolution to these activities. This should be viewed as an opportunity to show other municipalities how to effectively manage a crisis of this proportion. Please do something now to avert further preventable deaths due to the city's abrogation of its duty to provide for public safety. I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Yayoi Koizumi.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Yayoi. I stand here today to oppose the expansion of Seneca Meadows landfill and advocate for its closure as planned since 2018 at least. The high cancer rates near the landfill and the exploitation of its PFAS-laden leachate are serious concerns. This issue hits close to home for me personally as a single mother who raised a son who suffers from Asperger's syndrome. I have long suspected environmental chemicals to be contributing factor to his condition. Seneca Meadows landfill was initially slated for closure by 2025, and it is concerning that there are now discussions about expanding its operations. We have witnessed firsthand the potential for waste reduction through our dumpster assessments of our group, Zero Waste Ithaca, and with a significant amount of discarded materials consisting of perfectly good reusable materials, including food. By implementing zero waste strategies and promoting reduction initiatives, we have the potential to drastically reduce the volume of waste, so-called waste, sent to landfills. I also really want to draw attention to the exploitation of Seneca Meadows leachate across New York State. There has been a report. It's come to our attention that Ithaca's wastewater facility is equipped to accept landfill leachate, although it remains unclear if it is currently accepting it. The leachate from landfills carries an alarmingly high concentration of PFAS, posing potential risks to the safety of a local water supply from Cayuga Lake. The expansion of Seneca Meadows landfill could potentially lead to our own facility becoming a destination for leachate processing, especially around Lansing, where the people draws water from the lake, and placing our community at risk. I urge the legislature to reject any proposals for expansion or the construction of new landfills and incinerators. Instead, I implore you to support and implement zero waste strategies and messaging to reduce the amount of material waste entering our waste stream. Let us focus on true solutions rather than false ones. On that note, I kindly request your support for Zero Waste Ithaca's Plastic-Free July campaign, specifically our appeals for the Skip the Stuff and ban on artificial turf and the prohibition of land application of sewage sludge. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak today. I've shared my concerns, and I hope you will consider them. And as for the decommissioning plan, Seneca Lake Guardian's legal team at Earth Justice says post-project plan is required under the Part 360 regulations and as a part of any application. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is George Adams.
Hi, I'm George Adams. I live in Danby, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak about the resolution regarding Seneca Meadows. I only have a few simple things to say, although I've been studying and writing comments on to the DEC and the governor about several things that involve this, like the sludge spreading and whatnot.
George, excuse me, if you could put your mic a little higher, I think you're coming in a little softly.
But
thank you.
Just 2 points, basically. It takes longer than 3 minutes to explain how these substances, PFAS substances, are poisonous, and they will dwell with us for as long as we, and wherever we spread them. And I would like to see why in the resolution it states that PFAS-laden substances are shipped to the county. Are they sneaking it in? Why is it coming here? I don't understand why something that most of us should know is just an out-and-out poison and an enduring poison is coming into the county. It's going to stay here. If it goes through a wastewater treatment plant, I looked at the research on 5 or 6 papers, hundreds of wastewater treatment plants. None can deal effectively with PFAS substances. So if it comes in here and it goes into a wastewater treatment plant, it's going in the lake. I find that completely unacceptable. I don't know what effect this resolution might actually have in the long run, but I would think it's safer. I would feel more protected if the county considered having, passing a law that would ban the importation of landfill leachates across the county line. We have landfill issues within the county that we deal with by moving leachate, but it should not come in from someplace else. And consider a resolution that would encourage SMI to complete its system of methane recapture, expand its reverse osmosis purifying capacity, and resume the recirculation of leachate back into that mountain of trash, because that's what will eventually and more rapidly get rid of the problems. And consider developing incentives for the county citizens, fire department, and businesses to seek every possible alternative using products or materials that have PFAS in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of people that are participating via Zoom and that notified us in advance that they wanted to speak. So I see Yvonne Taylor.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Yvonne Taylor, and I am the Vice President of Seneca Lake Guardian, which is a Waterkeeper Alliance affiliate, whose mission is to protect and preserve the clean air, water, and thriving agriculture and tourism economy in the Finger Lakes region. And I want to thank you for considering the resolution on Seneca Meadows landfill tonight. The question I have is, I don't know the format of this meeting. Will I have time prior to the introduction of the resolution to just give you more of an overview, or is this my shot?
This is your shot.
Okay, here we go. I'll talk as fast as I can.
Can you pause just for a moment? Ann Corman.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't ask before, Dan, but I'd like her to be available to answer some questions during this, if that's okay.
Okay, so Yvonne,
she's my local expert.
Amend what I said. You will be available to potentially speak later on too.
Okay, so I'll say as much as I can now, and I can answer questions later as well. But the landfill would actually like you to ask the question, where is all the garbage going to go if it doesn't go here? But that is not the right question to be asking. The question to be asking is, how do we move away from being a throwaway culture where we don't need behemoth landfills in the first place? We live in a throwaway culture as evidenced by this putrid 30-story tall mountain of garbage located on the northern gateway to the Finger Lakes, which was slated to close in 2025. But instead, the for-profit Texas-based corporation has applied for an expansion of the landfill and an extension to operate through 2040. This application comes at a time when New York State has proposed a solid waste management plan that serves as a roadmap for bringing the state toward a zero waste circular economy that reduces the amount of garbage produced, implements robust recycling programs, and diverts waste from the waste stream, making landfills a last resort. Tompkins County is also doing its part by revising its own solid waste management plan with the same goals as the state. Meanwhile, the state's largest landfill wants to make more room for more garbage, turning this mountain into a heap of trash taller than the tallest building in the nearest city of Syracuse. This proposal is not only inconsistent with the goals of New York, but also with the goals of Tompkins County's solid waste proposal. And I know this landfill is roughly 40 miles from Tompkins County, but the landfill belches out 1 billion cubic feet of emissions every year, including methane. If you just look out the window, climate-induced wildfires are still burning out of control in Canada, impacting the air quality of Tompkins County residents as we speak. This landfill operating another 15 years is a bad idea for the climate. People have already talked about PFAS-laden leachate, which goes all over the state. And I would urge Tompkins County, as a major part of the Finger Lakes region, to consider that this is an American viticultural area with pending national heritage designation, and we need to unite together as a region to protect it from the expansion of this landfill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Abby Buddington.
Hi, this is Abby Buddington. I am the Secretary for Committee to Preserve the Finger Lakes. And in the interest of time, I echo the comments made in support of the resolution for Seneca Meadows, and certainly urge support of this and the larger understanding that our Finger Lakes agritourism industry depends on all of us working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here or on screen that was intended to speak at privilege of the floor? All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming to share your thoughts with us today. I do not see any municipal officials here today. Is that correct? All right. So we're up to legislator privilege of the floor. Okay, I knew that wasn't going to happen. So, Veronica.
Thank you. I don't like being first, but just two quick things. One, I guess a general mundane request is a reminder to everyone to try to speak into their microphones all the time and remind each other when someone's not being able to be heard. The reason I'm bringing this up is I was watching actually, it was a city meeting, not a county meeting, so maybe we're all perfect. But
of course we are.
I was watching back a video of a meeting, and it was somewhat alarming, the difference in volume and how I had to keep turning my volume up and down to see different people who were talking into the mic and not. So I just wanted to put that reminder, and I invite you all to interrupt me if I'm not doing a good job of that, because I know in the room we can't always tell. It doesn't make a huge difference whether you're talking into the mic or not, but it makes a lot of difference for people watching or for posterity watching the recordings. And accessibility on that vein. And the second thing is just a completely personal update, which is that I've been enjoying being referred to by they, them pronouns recently. And if people were up for doing that to me, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Other legislator privilege of the floor. Mike Lane.
Two things in the news today as we're approaching our budget that we need to keep in mind. One, for the first quarter of this year, New York State revenues are down by $7 billion over projections. And the other is that the comptroller has announced that apparently this is the worst investment year for the state retirement system since 2008. That's down over 4%. So that of course, means when the state is shy of money, it turns to the counties and other municipalities for its state mandates and to raid the real property taxes by making us raise our taxes. That's the way it does it. And I just want everyone to be aware that these things are happening, even though it seems like the economy's chugging along. There are some real problems here with the potential budget that we're going to have to be voting on for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Other legislator privilege of the floor. Randy Brown.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that Newfield has its Old Home Days on the 28th and 29th of July. They've moved it up from September. It's a big volunteer effort. There's a parade. A lot of fire departments will be there from around the various towns. There's chicken barbecue, and there's a little fair area for kids, and I just wanted to make people aware of it.
Very good. Thank you. Susan Curry.
I just wanted to give a shout out to our Department of Emergency Preparedness. I had an opportunity to attend one of the citizen preparedness sessions. Jeff Dunn and the staff did an amazing job. I highly recommend attending one of those. They were great.
Thank you. Deborah Dawson.
Thank you, Mr.
Dan.
Whatever. Yeah, okay. I wanted to take this opportunity. I think most of you are probably aware that we have a new business moving in at the Village of Lansing. This is not to blow the horn of the Village of Lansing, but this is a big development for all of us in the county. This is a company called Menlo Micro that is going to be investing about $50 million locally in opening up a, trying to remember what are they switches? I think they're switches for semiconductors. And these things are so tiny, they're the width of a human hair. This company will employ over 100 people in very well-paying jobs, which is a real boost for our local economy. And I wanted to express my thanks, and I think all of our thanks, to Senator Schumer, Governor Hochul, and Heather McDaniel at the IAED, who all worked hard to court this company to get them to locate here. This is a really logical place for them because the glass that goes into these switches is produced by Corning, and the switches will be used in the Micron semiconductors that will be going in Syracuse. And I hope that this bodes well for our development as part of a regional semiconductor hub. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other legislative privilege of the floor? Mike Sigler.
Just two things. To Veronica's point earlier, when I first got elected here, I found that I was talking into my light. A point there for you. But to Deborah's point, really, congratulations, everybody. I mean, it's amazing that this is happening to us. But I will say, just to add on to what you said too, very similar to the Knickerbocker when they decided to do business here. I know people that are actually already slated to work at the new, the new chip factory. And why is that? It's because we have the people that can do that kind of work. And that's really a testament to the area, is that we have people who have that kind of skill level that they are ready to take over those jobs. And that's something, not a lot of it, I mean, that is what insulates sometimes Tompkins County from other areas, is that we have a knowledge base here, and that's not to be, not to be taken granted, obviously. And I'm glad that we have people that understand that, and we're able to nurture that, and we're able to bring this company in, because it is just tremendous. And when you have one success like that, it's kind of like Micron, you're going to have another one and another one. I talked to the head of the county up there, Ryan McMahon, about Micron, and he said, that's the biggest thing that's ever happened in this county. But we've got two other people who are looking at us, right? And if either one of those had come in before Micron, those would have been the biggest of the county. So it's kind of similar to this. So it's our own little success. Little, $50 million is little, right? Not really, but it's just great. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Just like to make a quick mention. A week ago tonight, I was participating with the Groton Fire Department putting on a junior firefighter camp, our 6th one of since pre-COVID and post-COVID. And we had over 130 students from the schools that participated. That's over 1/6 of our enrollment in the school district. One of many summer camps that are being put on through the Town and Village Joint Recreation Commission in cooperation with the fire department. And just a prime example of the youth program support that we have through our county programs and local programs. And one of the highlights, I was pleased, and I want to send a shout out to the airport. We had to cancel the feature of a helicopter coming in because of the weather situation last Wednesday night. The airport crash truck was brought out to the delight of that 130 students, and there were half a dozen other fire departments that participated with us, but hopefully we've inspired the next generation of firefighters to join us in that service. And I do thank our county departments for their help on helping to put this on. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a very impressive event. I hope there's more of those elsewhere too. Any other legislator privilege of the floor? Rich, John.
Thank you, Dan. I read an article in the Ithaca Times, and I just would like to do a short quote from it. This is from Acting Chief of Police Ted Schwartz for the City of Ithaca, and he was talking about the recruitment efforts for police officers. And he said, IPD cannot make people want to become cops because this is a societal problem. We need help from the community to make our young people think that policing is a desirable profession. And that is incumbent on this board. He was talking about the police commission. On this board, the Common Council, and every resident that lives here, Schwartz said. He added, really what I'm asking for is help. We need help recruiting in diverse areas, which we're trying to do, but we're also trying to do our full-time jobs. So any help that anyone wants to give, I'd love it. And I wanted to just mention that because it is a desirable profession. It's a critically important profession. And I've worried over the last several years that in emphasizing reimagining public safety, where there is a very legitimate goal of addressing the issues of how we police, some people have used that as an opportunity to just attack police officers in general. We need police officers. Someone has taken upon themselves, I've commented on graffiti before, and I'm going to do it right now, but they've scrawled on the side of a building, "We protect us." And aside from not really understanding irony in damaging property saying they're going to protect us, it's not going to work. You need highly trained professionals to do this. It's incredibly hard to do it well in crisis situations. And it's important. And so I didn't want the moment to pass without answering Chief Schwartz's request for help. We should be talking to our constituents and certainly people who are at a decision point in their lives about careers that this is an honorable thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other legislator privilege of the floor? All right. Thank you, everybody. Chair's report, I just want to say this. Shauna Black, our regular chair, is back on the continent, but not in this state yet, so she's traveling right now. I did speak with her very briefly earlier today. She'll be back on duty tomorrow. And the other thing I want to mention, and it's relevant to what many of the speakers were speaking about today, is that Tompkins County does have a proposed solid waste management plan, a 10-year plan, that is in a comment period right now through August 7th. And so we're going to have a presentation about this plan at the next legislature meeting on August 1st so that we can all hear a little more about it. And that'll give us just a little more time after that if we want to submit any comments. And I hope that it will potentially address some of the issues that have to do with garbage and how to reduce it. That is really our goal in the long run. All right, there's no chair's appointments, correct? Okay, thank you. Next up, special topic presentation. Tompkins Cortland Community College presentation, general college update and brief budget review. We have TC3 President Amy Kremenek and Bill Talbot are here. Welcome.
Can you hear me? Okay. Are we hooked up? Okay. So thank you and good evening. My name is Amy Kremenek. I am the president of Tompkins Cortland Community College. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to provide you with an update on your community college. I'm going to speak a little bit about our enrollment, give you an update on some of the workforce development programs that are underway, and then Bill Talbot, who is our Vice President of Finance and Administration, will speak to facilities and finance. So I'd like to give you an update on where we are in terms of fall 2023 enrollment. And I was speaking with a couple of you before the meeting started, and I will say that am I breaking in and out?
Maybe a little further back would be helpful. Yep.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Okay. So we are 6 weeks away from the start of the fall semester, so summer is moving more quickly than any of us would probably like, but the fall semester at TC3 starts on August 28th. Currently, our enrollment for our continuing student population is up 10%. This is students who are continuing from spring 23 and then re-registering for fall 23. Our total student population, and this is core students, those who are post-secondary, they have graduated from high school, they've completed they're not in our concurrent enrollment program, our College Now program, which you might be familiar with. Total student enrollment right now for fall is up more than 13%. And that is on top of last year where we also experienced enrollment increases. Our full-time equivalent, which is how we are funded by the state, is up over 14%. In fact, we are close to up 15% in terms of full-time equivalent enrollment. And most encouraging of all, our applications for 23-24 are up 47%, which is really phenomenal. TC3 is one of the leading community colleges in the state as it relates to applications for enrollment at the college. To give you an idea of where our applications are coming from, you can see here the sponsor county, which is the silver portion of the circle on the left-hand side. About 35 to 40% of our applications come from our sponsoring counties. So this is from Cortland County and Tompkins County. The next largest portion of our applications is what we call our donut counties. So if you literally think of a donut in the center of the whole, that's Tompkins and Cortland County. The counties that surround us are our next largest portion. And then from there, individuals who are enrolling from throughout the state, then downstate, throughout the Northeast, and we also have a fairly sizable portion of international students who travel to our college. For those students who are out of county, they do pay either double tuition, or if they have a valid certificate of residence, their county will reimburse us for the portion of tuition that is otherwise covered by taxpayers in Tompkins and Cortland County. Whoop. Down. So as I believe you're aware, we are particularly proud of the work that we've done recently with our micro-credentials. These are programs that are short-term, anywhere from 9 to 15 credits. We have 3 brand new micro-credentials. 2 are Direct Support Provider 1 and Direct Support Provider 2, and these are programs designed to train individuals to work with individuals with disabilities. And this was a program that we worked with employers in our counties to be able to train their incumbent workforces for increased responsibility and therefore increased pay. The micro-nano fabrication safety is another new micro-credential. This program is designed for people to work in the emerging microchip industry, which, as Legislator Dawson was speaking about, in the new Menlo Menlo Micro, do I have that right? Menlo Micro project that is going up in Lansing. And in addition to those micro-credentials, we also continue to work on associate degree programs, including an Associate of Science degree, which is a transfer program in health sciences. And certainly everyone's aware of the huge need for health professionals in our community. Many of them do require a workforce credential, a training credential, a one-year certificate, or an associate's degree that brings people directly to work. However, many programs require a bachelor's degree and beyond, and so this transfer program will allow students to be able to transfer on to colleges like SUNY Upstate, which provides that junior and senior level to allow a student to complete a bachelor's degree and then to go on for further training and education in healthcare. In terms of workforce development, there has been a lot of activity, and that activity has also been supported by this legislature. TC3 is a member of the Community College Cares Grant Consortium, which is a consortium with 6 other community colleges across the state designed to train people for careers in the healthcare industry. A couple of things that are really interesting about this is that it's very much focused on what we call PLA, which is prior learning assessment. So individuals who are coming with work experience or other types of experience or credentials that are not necessarily conferred through a degree will be able to assess that experience and then award credit for that to include work and preparation for that degree. In addition to that is stackable credentials. So we know many students are not quite ready to go on or to start at least with an associate's degree. So we want to give them the opportunity to start with a workforce training credential and then move on, if they choose, for a certificate and then on to an associate's degree. So that's that stackable credentials. We recently renewed an agreement, or we're going to be announcing here in the short term, a renewed agreement with Guthrie, which will allow us to have an evening nursing program. And certainly nursing is one of the biggest areas of need in terms of the local employment workforce. We will be announcing here shortly a community college workforce transformation grant. This was provided to us through a national funder. They've asked us not to disclose just yet the specific details to that, but you will be hearing more about that in the next 2 weeks. Menlo Micro, which was mentioned, Micron in the semiconductor industry. We do have the micro nano fabrication safety, which is a very long name for a program that essentially trains people to work in clean rooms. And we work directly with Cornell. Fortunately, TC3 has one of the closest clean rooms of all of the 30 community colleges across the state. We don't need to build our own because we have a partner in Cornell who is allowing us to use their clean room. And so we will be able to train people for work in this very, very important industry. TC3 is also a member of a consortium that consists of both 2- and 4-year colleges, as well as business and industry. In fact, there's a meeting tomorrow in Syracuse that I'll be attending, full day, to talk about how colleges and universities can help prepare the workforce for industry, for companies like Menlo Micro, Micron, and those that are certain to come. Along these lines, the importance of faculty just really can't be understated, and we have been able to hire some new faculty recently. Electrical engineering tech, this is also connected to the work that we're doing in microchips and semiconductor. Civil engineering and construction management is another area of high need, and so we have prioritized that. As well as, again, healthcare. A&P is anatomy and physiology, which is the gateway course for all of the healthcare programs. And so we've been able to hire recently a faculty member to help augment our existing workforce with that, as well as 2 faculty members who will be teaching English, which is obviously a foundational skill. And so I'm going to turn it over to Bill Talbot, who will give you also an update on facilities.
Thanks very much. You'll see there's a little bit more detail to some of the slides, and that's only because I know that this slide has to stand on its own, as do the financials. Not everybody can remember all the numbers or want to jot them down. However, I'll be just running through these things pretty quickly. As most of you are pretty well aware, for the very first time, we've had some major updates in our labs since the building And so we're talking about the chemistry lab, the physics lab, the electrical design labs. All these labs are required for workforce development. And so we started with the 3.12 million pre-COVID, and we will have it open for the classes this fall. So that has gone well on schedule. A little short on the cash because of the changes in the cost of construction, but we're working through other grants to fill those gaps. Network replacement, this is something that we worked with the deferred maintenance group that involves Mike and Randy. Thank you very much for your involvement in that. We had identified that we had to replace $850,000 worth of equipment that on average was 9 years old, and we were able to avert that investment by using a managed network service. And then the legislator here has agreed, along with Cortland, to help fund that operating costs for the next 3 years, while until the enrollments get to a level that they can then take over those costs. Sidewalks and parking lots, again, we're talking about a pretty big disaster there. And as far as being very creative, because our Cortland friends don't have the same level of cash, they volunteered their staff, their equipment as a gift in kind, and so they're doing the work, but you're putting up your fair share of that bill, and that's allowing us to get work done that we would never imagined be able to get done. Mass notification, we got a quote from the existing vendor, $1 million to replace that, to make sure that if we had any issues, especially in a lockdown, that all students and faculty and staff would be able to be notified. It was going to cost $1 million. But through the lab updates, we found a solution through putting in a new fire panel, that there's a card for roughly $9,000 that can use all the existing equipment, and so we averted having to spend $1 million. To give you perspective as to what you've contributed for deferred maintenance in 22-23, it was $200,000 between the state and the two counties. And just to be clear, the state matches 100% what the two counties put in. So in 22-23, between Tompkins and Cortland, the two of you put in $100,000, the state matched it with $100,000. In 23-24, that we increased it to $500,000. That has just passed and gone through that whole process. And the ask is, as we go through this budget process for 24-25, that we go forward with another $500,000. And it's through the organization that Mike and Randy are part of, and then we've got two legislators from Cortland also that define how we're going to spend that money. From a budget standpoint, this year we're forecasting that will come in about $1 million better than what we had anticipated. Since we drew down almost $1.3 million at the beginning of the year, it means a net burn of $300,000 for 22-23. For 23-24, this budget has already been passed for the college by you in Cortland. The enrollments are expected to go up roughly 15%. This was not just a fictitious number. It's based on the actual results of this past year, all the activities, all the investment in some of the software that you, again, are helping to support, and then conversion rates, and based on the number of applications, with the conversion rates, we're anticipating that we should be able to grow another 15%. So on the revenue side, we're talking about a $1.8 million increase due to tuition and chargebacks. On the expense side, we're looking at a $2.4 million increase. If we look at wages excluding the 3% that we gave everybody for a wage increase over the 2 years, which, given the inflation rate, that was a very difficult rate for people in the college to accept. But everybody being a partner, they did accept it. And so if you were to take that wage increase out, we would have the same wages this next year as we do this year. So there's no inflation from a staffing standpoint. We're all trying to work within the staffing that we've got, work smarter, not harder, and moving positions around when they become available. On the fringe side, that's harder to control. Increases, especially in healthcare, constantly go up higher than inflation. And so while this budget, we're assuming a 7.7% increase in healthcare and 4% across for everything else. Contractuals is what's going up the largest, 1.2 million. Part of that's because 400,000 was covered this year by a SUNY grant. We have some IT security investments that need to be made. We were compromised at one point. Nothing serious occurred, but between the networks and staffing, we recognized that there needs to be further investment there. So we did add some money there. And then if you just assume inflation at 6%, which we know it's higher than that, that's another few $100,000. So I'll just note one thing, which we've had in every presentation. We're one of the community colleges with the lowest cost per student amongst all the community colleges. We usually are somewhere around the third, fourth lowest cost per. So just keep that in mind when you're comparing us to other community colleges. And for this year, we'll be drawing $1 million from the fund balance. For 23-24, the fund balance, we're at $4.9 million, which is just less than 3 months worth of payroll. However, that is the highest amount of fund balance the college has had in over a decade. And yet we're also one of the lowest, we have one of the lowest fund balances of all the community colleges. So that's it for the presentation.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mike Sigler.
I have a couple questions on that last slide. So if we could go back to it, that'd be cool.
I shut it too quick.
No, there's just a lot there.
There you go.
When you talk revenue, so is that revenue, it's obviously from students and stuff, but does that include from the counties, obviously, what we contribute?
Yours didn't change, so I didn't make any adjustment there. Right. I was trying to reflect here the changes to the budget year over year versus those things that stay the same.
Right, but that 33.9 that is from us, right? Or a good.
Yes, that includes yours also. Gotcha. Yep. What it does not include, which is important to note, what it does not include is the amount that you have provided to us in a grant form. Because of the two counties are very different financially, Cortland has a tough time in trying to accept the fact that base aid would go up. And so we've been able to work through by getting the additional funding through very specific projects over a 3-year period. And that has truly helped the college. And if we can continue to grow the enrollments, then the enrollments will be able to cover those costs. If you add it to base, then it can never be reduced. And that's the part that's hard for Cortland to accept. They have been very, very graciously working with you and with us in finding the funds for the next 2 to 3 years, but they're nervous about committing forever.
My other question is on this inflation, assume 6%, but isn't the inflation kind of already built into the wages? It's already built into the fringe increase. I mean, that's where your major expenses are. And so I guess I'm not understanding kind of where that 318K is coming from.
Well, first of all, inflation is much higher than 6%. It's closer to 8 to 9. Number two is inflation for wages only went up 3%. And so it's not really built into it because we are losing employees. We can't attract employees. When we looked for comptrollers, as an example, we had 3 failed searches. We looked for a marketing director, we had 3 failed searches. So part of it is that our cost structure to attract employees into a community college, into our environment, is not competitive. And yet we're forced to keep the salaries low because we can't increase the revenue beyond what we're doing at this point.
Gotcha. All right.
Other questions or comments? Mike Lane.
Amy, I was really pleased to see in your report about Guthrie renewing its support of the night nursing program. I think that's $500,000, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I wondered how we're doing working with Cayuga Med.
Mm-hmm. So Cayuga Medical Center is an excellent partner. You're familiar with the work they're doing at the Ithaca Mall site as it relates to having joint facilities for colleges and universities, I suppose, to conduct whether it's workforce training or associate degree programs. That project is in motion, which would be great. As we are looking to, currently, we have an opportunity to gain some additional funding from SUNY through a SUNY transformation grant. And what we're looking at with that is to build 2 new additional healthcare programs, one in rad tech, the other one in sonography, which we know from Guthrie as well as CMC that those are 2 areas of high need in both counties. So we have a strong relationship with Guthrie as much as we have with Cayuga Med. Both are willing to hire every graduate we can produce.
Thank you.
Greg Mezzi.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation and information. I think it's a really important reminder of the critical role that community colleges play within our community as a whole, especially creating those opportunities for people to get an education, get a certification, and get to work or get on to the next adventure in their educational career. I really was impressed by the way that it seems like you're adapting and evolving with the landscape within our community in terms of the micro credentials that you're providing and the partnership with other universities and to see enrollment up. I mean, I think this is really positive and, you know, look forward to the continued growth in any way that I think we as a legislature can continue to support that because these are the workforce development things and this is one piece, right? We have other partners playing this role, but we need everybody to be hitting full cylinders and it sounds like you all are really running it at full speed with doing the best you can. It was nice to hear that the labor increases, as unfortunate as it is maybe not from staff growth, but just from wage growth. So it seems like you're really trying to dial it in and find the right balance between revenue, expenses, growth, and all of that. So thank you for the work you do on behalf of the community.
Thank you.
Rich John.
Greg kind of stole my comment, but good. Yeah, I remember you doing a presentation about the micro-credentials early on, and it's really exciting to see you executing on it, and it seems to be working with the enrollment. This is something our community really needs, so thank you for that. I'd also want to take this chance to say thank you for your work with College Initiative Upstate. You know, I mean, it's a fairly small program, but for the people involved, it's critically important and it's wonderful. So thanks.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
Travis Brooks.
Thank you for the presentation. As a graduate from TC3 and a distinguished alumni award winner in 2017, I really understand firsthand what TC3 means to folks in this community. So thank you. I do have a question, and if it may be an unfair question in terms of the presentation. So if you can't answer it, I'd be more than happy to check in later offline. But one of the things that I run into a lot with young people in this community is folks that are in their late 20s, early 30s, who may have went to TC3 fresh out of high school. Maybe they messed up on their FAFSA. Maybe they left school in the middle of the semester and didn't, what do you call that, leave properly. I forgot what it is you do when you leave school in the semester. Withdraw. They didn't withdraw properly. And they want to go back to school, but they owe thousands of dollars because they didn't withdraw properly, they didn't do the FAFSA right. And so they're always asking me, what can they do? They really want to go back to school, but they owe TC3 $5,000, $6,000. They don't have it to begin with, and it's something that's keeping them from going back to school. Are there any programs that you have, or are there any options for students who find themselves in that situation?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question, and also thank you for being a TC3 alum. I appreciate that. As far as students who've left, we have many students for lots of reasons. Life gets in the way, things change, they start college and for whatever reason are not able to finish. This is something that I'm highly concerned about. We have opportunity for students to be called what we call reinstated, but the financial challenges are real. I think that there are opportunities potentially to work with a student, whether, and again, if it's a significantly large number, sometimes that's not possible to repay that. But we also do have programs, scholarships. There are some colleges across the state that have second chance programs, if you will, that will allow students to re-enroll and find a way to address the debt. It is something that that's a challenging situation because we do have many students who are paying their tuition, and finding a way to balance those two interests are going to be important. Do you want to add something to that? Yeah. Okay.
So we have piloted a couple different programs. There's one that if a student had earned at least a few credits, but had high balances, that if they were to come back and were to complete the semester, we would forgive part of their debt. And then if they continued on, we could continue to reduce their debt. Of the 6 that took that for the first time, only 2 succeeded. And so we are still trying to pilot a couple of those to make sure we're just not wasting or putting them further into debt. Because it's not just debt with the college, it's debt with loans, it's that they're using up their TAP monies or their Pell monies. So we do want to make sure that they're truly ready to come back. But if they truly are ready to come back and they've demonstrated so, then we wouldn't hold them back just for money. But they would have to earn that discount.
Thank you.
Mike Lane.
I had another question. I wondered if there could be any update on the Cultivare program.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. As you may know, we made the very, very difficult decision in May to temporarily shut down the restaurant in Cultivare due to staffing issues. The staffing issues right now are extraordinary, and even just driving down here today, I noticed now the state troopers are hiring. So it's just amazing how many people are trying to hire actively, and we are among them. There has been an extraordinary amount of work that has gone on since the end of May when that decision had to be made, including the redevelopment of job descriptions. Currently, we are working to hire an executive chef as well as a director of operations. At the same time, we also are exploring partnerships because at Cultivare, it's not only a restaurant, it's not only an event space, it's also the home of 3 academic programs: culinary arts, hospitality management, and wine marketing, all of which are critically important to the health and well-being of this county. And so that's something that I'm absolutely prioritizing. We must be ready for the fall semester. We have students who are ready to go and enroll in those programs, and the home of those things are at Cultivare. At the same time, though, we are working to try to resolve these staffing issues that are in place, both at the top level as well as at the server level, and then also potentially explore some partnerships to see if there are potentially some organizations that are interested in working with us so that we can get the restaurant reopened and get the event space, which has been working right through the summer, but continue to grow that as well.
Thanks for that.
Any other questions? Deborah Dawson.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy and Bill, for the presentation, and thank you both. You've been a great team to work with over the past couple of years. And along that line, I am really sorry that we're losing Bill to Grandpa Track. I hope that his replacement will follow his lead in being proactive in bringing the college's needs to our attention well in advance so we can plan how to assist you. But thank you both, and congratulations, Bill. You stinker. We are going to miss you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you. I heard a lot of good news in there. I mean, I know it wasn't all good news, but it was really nice to hear. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you. All right. Next thing we're going to do is go to Resolution R. Somebody like to move Resolution R? Ann Corman.
Yeah, I'd like to move Resolution R. It's on packet page 109. And it's resolution opposing the increase of the permitted landfill height and extended life of Seneca Meadows, Inc.
Randy Brown seconds. Thank you. Discussion. Ann.
Yes. A couple little facts that I'd like to add in here. There is a a memo attached in the agenda, so a lot of information is in there, and I thank Yvonne Taylor, who's on to help answer questions, to get a lot of this information for me. So a couple little stats. The current landfill was opened in 1953. It became Seneca Meadows in 1983. That's something we didn't have in the memo yet, so if you want to make note of that. The size of the landfill is currently 400 acres, which if you're in city terms is 100 square blocks. And so just wanted to mention that. Also, I've had some questions of people asking, well, why should we care about what happens in another county? And Tompkins County has spoken out about protecting our county and the Finger Lakes area in terms of nuclear power plants, gas fracking, coal power plants. We've pushed and supported electrification of buildings, heat pumps, renewables, energy efficiency, battery storage. And another common question that I've gotten from people is, well, we have produced garbage. It has to go somewhere. So I have a little thing here. So this is a little example to show this might be an average garbage can in somebody's house. And a lot of times you might think, well, this is things that are labeled garbage. But what I pose to you as, and I'm stealing this from somebody here in the room, another way to call it is discarded items. And through our reimagining and rethinking our solid waste plan, we have a lot of different people in the community who are helping us figure out what to do with these items. And turns out one of the biggest things that we have is reconstruction, things that could be used for reconstruction. A lot of things that could be recycled, which a lot of people are already doing. A lot of things that we are reusing, compost. I could go on, I could line this all up with all the things that we're actually already doing. Really, the only one I'm adding is, right now, is reconstruction, and we need to improve how many things we're reusing. And just bear with me, and then I'll be done. So construction actually accounts for more than half, construction debris, more than half. This is reuse, my mother's blender that I fixed when I was a kid. Still works. Film can be recycled. This can be reused. More construction debris. And that's all, we get charged by the ton, and construction debris is very heavy. My Ithaca Journal cup, that's an antique, so I'll keep that. Things that are made in packaging that is not recyclable, which we're working on at the state to change that. So that's another avenue of what we're doing. I'll keep that for now. That will go back in. We do electronics recycling, more film. We already do paper recycling. So really what's left is not much. And so I actually think we can be more ambitious than our current plan, and I'm hoping we can not just reduce by 50% our solid waste, but we really need to reduce by 80, 90% and create a circular economy. And that actually, the DEC, if they pass this permit for the Seneca Meadows, this is against the state's climate plan. So by this resolution, we're giving them a nudge and supporting other municipalities to say, no, we need to figure out a different way and not to extend the life of this landfill. Thank you.
Thank you.
A diorama?
It wouldn't fit in one, I tried.
Amanda Champion.
That was great, Annie. Thank you. I think you could definitely do a diorama of that, the little boxes, you know. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about this. I probably will support it. I just think that we all make waste, and we have to put it somewhere. We don't currently have a landfill in Tompkins County, so we are shipping it to another county. And one of the speakers said they don't want waste materials brought to our neighborhood, but that's what we're doing. We're sending our waste to somebody else's backyard. So personally, I think if we want to deal with the problem ourselves, we should have our own landfill and figure out where we're going to put that in this county. And then we're all going to be responsible for our trash. That's how you're going to get people responsible.
Is that a motion?
I'm pretty sure that would not pass as a motion. But I think people need to take responsibility and for their own trash. And I think that's what Annie is indicating right here, is there's more that you can do besides just throw something away. So, I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts about this, but thanks to the folks who've been working on it and bringing this forward.
Randy Brown.
Yes, I support this resolution. Currently, Tompkins County is not sending any of their garbage to that landfill. But it could happen again because it's based on the contracts that we go enter, and they may choose to send it there if we award that contract. I think it's a matter of responsibility, and I think that if we just continue to build these landfills, then we're not going to move forward and control our waste. I think technology is available and it needs to be used. One thing I learned in this recycling world is Fortune 500 companies, when they deal with their suppliers, they require responsibility. And if those suppliers send their products that are not recyclable, they bill them to dispose of them. And so they know how to do that. Technology exists. It may cost more money for some of the packaging to be recyclable, but it needs to be done, and I think we need to start now.
Thank you. Lee Shirtliff.
I think Randy may have answered part of my question. And Dan, you alluded to a presentation upcoming from Solid Waste. But let me just ask point blank, is there a fiscal implication to Tompkins County by this resolution or the closing or shortening of the time at the landfill that's in question here? Has that been discussed at committee level or answered at Solid Waste?
Our current contract is up in May of '24. We were instructed by Leo at our last meeting, and I think that was correct. And at that point, we're going to bid it out. And right now, it's going to 2 different landfills, one in Ontario, and I forgot where the other one is. But if the contract was less expensive to go to Seneca Meadows, then that would be an issue for us. But right now, we're not sending any waste there.
Rich John.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this resolution. I had a chance to ride my bicycle past Seneca Meadows last summer. It is gigantic, and it doesn't smell great. It's imposing and everything else. It is a landfill. If we pass this resolution, I'm left to wonder, where does the garbage go? Does it go to a better run landfill or just somewhere else? I don't know that we're addressing the issue at all by saying close Seneca Meadows. What I think we should be doing is trying to get New York State to actually act on their language and try to develop a real plan. I have some skepticism there given, pick your topic of New York State trying to execute complicated things. They don't seem to be very good at it. So I see the point there, but I don't know that closing Seneca Meadows would force New York State to do their job well. They probably won't. Well,
No, I totally agree, but it's just
I wish it wasn't the case, but you know, you look at FMAP, you look at their ethics issues, you look at raise the age, which was a fairly simple one, you know, that we didn't want to put young kids in our jails, and they couldn't figure out how to hold the kids otherwise, and they still haven't, years later. They've just made a total mess of it. Something as complicated as really making significant change in how people treat their waste, I don't know, but I think that's where it needs to come from. This is state and national policy. I did hear one of the speakers talk about methane capture, and I made some notes here, leachate recycling, and using a reverse osmosis system to pull stuff out of the water. I would vote for a resolution all day long saying if you're going to extend the life of Seneca Meadows, you better do a better job of methane capture and everything else. Let's have a state-of-the-art landfill, rather than just leaving it to chance that our garbage will go to somewhere else that may be better, may be worse. We don't know. I also think there's some things incumbent on us as a legislature here in Tompkins County to do the things Annie just talked about, that we should be really aggressive in trying to move the needle on our citizens taking this up as an important part of addressing climate change that can be addressed within people's homes, is what are you throwing away? And some of that comes from, obviously, the retailers and the manufacturers sending us garbage that they shouldn't in terms of packaging, but also in making good personal decisions. You know, we should be super recyclers, whatever you want to call it, but we're certainly much better than when I was a kid, where everything went in the garbage. And I remember going to our dump, by the way, which was down where Nate's Floral Estate and Lowe's is right now. And I remember you could drive in there and just throw things on the ground. There was no liner. There was no containment. We're doing better. We're not nearly where we need to go. But I think I'm sorry for talking so much, but I struggled with this. I don't think I can support this resolution. I'd love to see us vote on a different resolution that is more direct in saying how this landfill should be run. Thank you.
Mike Sigler.
I'm not going to apologize for talking so long. So. I have trouble with anything like this, because anything I say, people then look at it like it's some corporate shill. And I'm going to refer back to something that Randy said, and it's about responsibility. And no, Randy, I don't think it's responsible to call for the closing of something that is actually needed. I would consider that irresponsible, in fact. Even under best case scenario, our people have come forward from Waste Management and said, we want to cut, we make an actual lot of garbage per person, I think. It's something like 2.8 pounds per day. That seems like a lot to me, but they want to cut it to 1.3, I think, was the number. Okay, that's a big cut. It still seems like a lot of garbage to me, but okay. That still leaves you with 50 million pounds per year, and that garbage does have to go somewhere. Right now, we're sending it to maybe Ontario. Okay, but the next bid, maybe we'll send it to Seneca. It seems to me if you close Seneca, you have three options, really. You either build your own landfill, which I don't think there's any town in Tompkins that's going to get on board with that. You either ship it further away than where you are. If we were shipping it to Seneca Meadows, shipping is really the big cost of anything. You ship salt, it's expensive. You ship gravel, it's expensive. Why? Because of trucks. So yeah, we'd have to ship it further away with more gas, worse for the environment, et cetera. Or you burn it. And I don't see anybody calling, I mean, Sweden does that. I don't see anybody in the room saying, yeah, we should do that. So it seems to me that the Seneca Meadows, if you close it, that's a real problem. I don't know what you do with the 50 million pounds of garbage. We all know that as we raise prices at our own dumping site, right, our tipping fees, if we raise them too high, people start dumping in places where we don't want them dumping. You will find a couch in the forest. You will find tires next to the side of the road, and I don't want to see that either. But if you have to ship it further away, if you have fewer places to dump it, the prices are going to go up. I mean, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. I like a lot what Rich John said, frankly, and that's what a lot of people were talking about. What are we talking about? We're talking about leachate. We're talking about the natural gas or the methane capture. Yeah, we could build those requirements into any landfill that we want, frankly. Right now, I read an article, I sent it to you all about Seneca Meadows. It makes sense. They actually supposedly, I don't know why I would disbelieve them. I would like, if you can go do a tour for this, they remove the PFAS from their leachate before they ship it out. I don't know if that's true. They're saying it's true. I don't have any reason to disbelieve them. If it's not true, then somebody should call them out on that, I suppose. But you could make that a requirement at the state level. They are a big facility, and generally, big facilities make more money, so they have more money to spend on things like that. If we're going, look at our local landfills. Those were not well run. Why? Because they were small, rinky-dink places that didn't have a lot of regulation and certainly wouldn't meet the regulations of today, nor could we probably afford those regulations. So until somebody comes up with something, I think, that says, listen, we're going to cut our garbage. We're going to see over the next how many years if we can cut our garbage to 1.3 pounds per person. If we get to that point and we say we're not shipping out as much garbage as we used to and this is no longer a needed facility, great. But right now it's a needed facility. And I don't see any other way around that. If we went back 70 years and said, should we build it there? I don't know if the answer would be yes, but I certainly don't think we should now take other pristine ground. It's a dump. It's going to be a dump forever, unless you're telling me we're going to somehow mine all the garbage out of there. That's kind of baked into the cake, and I would rather not see us take other pristine ground and open other dumps to replace this dump, because you still need to put the garbage someplace. So thank you.
Greg Mezzi. Passing? Okay. Veronica Pillar.
Thank you. I'm strongly in support of this resolution. I wanted to clarify one thing, because I've heard people say different things. Right now, the status quo is that the landfill is closing in 2025. So I think someone mentioned shortening the life of the landfill, and that's not really what's happening. It's what this resolution is basically saying: continue with the original plan of closing the landfill, as opposed to lengthening the life of it. Second, I know, Rich, you mentioned New York having a plan, and I don't disagree with all of your comments on the functionality of New York State, but the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, has some, maybe it's not enough of a plan, but it's got goals in it that lengthening the life of this landfill would directly oppose. So if we want to at least try to follow the plan, the guidelines that exist, we should, this resolution, of course, it doesn't actively do anything, but the landfill should be closed on the original timeline. And then to some of the other stuff about the amount of garbage we generate, I think that, like Annie's demonstration mentioned, garbage is not a given. We generate a certain amount of it, but generating X amount of garbage per person per time is not a fundamental need. The garbage is generated as a byproduct of meeting other needs, like I need to eat food, and given all the other constraints, some of the food comes in like unrecyclable plastic packaging, or recyclable, but it's not recyclable here or something. So I really believe that we should put in work towards sustainability, and it can be toward changing how we meet what really are our fundamental needs, such that it doesn't generate so much garbage. And I think sometimes people say, oh, well, we, the people, just need to, do a better job of it and be better about recycling and composting and reusing and everything. And yes, that's part of it, but there's also a structural part of it. I reported yesterday at the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee a little report back from the Get Your Green Back Tompkins celebration a couple weeks ago where one of the director's main takeaway messages from the last decade was that we need to focus on me and we, not just individual actions, but how it impacts others and also the structural changes necessary. I kind of believe that also with the landfill, there's an if you build it, they will come aspect. Maybe I was just too, in my formative years, watching Field of Dreams, but if there's the space for the garbage, we're not that incentivized to figure out other things. But I think that people will figure out other things if it's made necessary. And it feels a little bit like expanding the landfill is like if your roof is leaking and you're like, oh, well, there's 3 gallons of water an hour coming in and our buckets are gonna be full in this time, so I'd better go to the store and get more buckets. If you're going to the store, get something to patch the roof. Like, obviously that's an oversimplification, but that is a way I'm looking at it. And I think this is an important step towards sustainability.
Mike Lane.
One of the speakers said that the wrong question to ask is where are we going to put it if we don't have these landfills, because it's so important that we get the state to change the packaging laws, for example. I think we have to have both. And your demonstration was wonderful. It's the best physical demonstration we've had here from a legislator since Mike Sigler showed us the plastic and paper bags and made his argument. But what you said is correct, and someday we'll be down to that. I hope that we don't have to turn the solid waste fee into a whole new county tax. We know that it's gone up hugely because of the lack of recycling markets in the last 3 years. Amanda, you scared me to death when you talked about us building our own landfill. Please, almost 35 years ago, we went through all of this. It's interesting hearing this talked about. When I first came on the legislature, this is all we talked about was solid waste and recycling. There was a huge effort at the county to site a landfill in Tompkins County because we had to close Caswell and Hillview Road. And there were a number of sites picked. They focused on West Dryden, because as a county official was alleged to have said at the time, which did not make people happy, West Dryden was made for landfills because it had hardpan underneath.
Not the crown jewel of the county, Mike.
No, your district.
I know, that's what I mean.
That's right. And the idea of building a landfill in Dryden or anywhere else that was looked at enraged people. And I can remember the meeting at NYSEG at the auditorium out there was just filled with people opposed to the county's efforts to build a landfill. The county heard them, and it changed the whole plan to doing the transfer station and moving and shipping it out to larger controlled landfills, which were better controlled by DEC, let's put it that way. Some of the counties around, you take Cortland, for example, decided to go ahead and build their own landfill. And then they found that the amount of, with recycling and other things, the amount of trash was much less than they had. They couldn't make the money to make the bond payments on building the landfills. They've had a terrible time over the years, a lot of counties trying to do that. Same with the Onondaga County's burn facility up there, where they couldn't come up with enough trash trying to get it from other counties. So we did the right thing, and I'm not sure where, Rich, your comments, I'm not sure where we would send our trash. We don't send to Seneca at this point, but other places do. And what are we going to do with it? And it's not going to be gone tomorrow. It's probably not going to be gone for many years. And we've got to proceed with better recycling. This county made a commitment to that 3 years ago when we decided, unlike some counties which are just going to start landfilling their recycling, that we would pay the extra money to have it recycled as best as possible. So I'm not going to support the resolution, but I do support the movement toward the reduction in waste.
Greg Mezzi.
Yeah, Randy, I like what you had to say about putting pressure on suppliers, and I hope in our next bid for our trash hauler that we can put some of those expectations of making sure that wherever it does go, or whatever landfill it does go to, is doing the right things, is maybe being a leader in landfill technology. So hopefully we can, as a consumer, to those purveyors, put that pressure on there. I think, Rich, your points of needing to push at the state level and advocate for other metrics and actions, I guess, and expectations for landfill operators definitely is needed. I had similar reaction at first, like many of my colleagues have had, about do I support this or not? Lee, you talked about financial implication. I think there's long-term health and well-being of our community and our neighboring communities that have a financial implication to our community that we may not be able to quantify. I think we're part of the Finger Lakes region. I think our lakes and our waterways are an incredible part of our economy, and to see potentially something, again, this has been around since 1953, but who knows the long-term effects if we're continue to put more waste and build this out. I think it's really important. Everything has a useful life, and I agree with that. I think buildings have a useful life. Automobiles, equipment, all of those things have useful lives. And I think the landfill has probably run its course with its useful life. And really all this is saying is let the plan be the plan and not support changing the plan and not continuing on with an additional time or request to extend the life of the landfill. I do still wonder, and I'm curious about where the trash that is generated goes and how yes, we do need to make change, but trash will still be created. We hope it's as little and as minimal and infrequent as possible, but it will exist. And how we deal with that still needs to be addressed, and hopefully we can take a responsible action in the sourcing of our trash disposal. The Ontario landfill where we send ours, to my knowledge, is slated to also be closed in 2028, was my understanding, 5 years from now, which is also in the Finger Lakes region as well. So I don't know what to do, but I think the threat to our natural environment, our natural resources, we've been a dumping ground for far too long, and we have an incredible natural resource that's a big draw to New York State and to our region and our economy. And I can't see not supporting something like this because it does have an impact, I think, far beyond what we can actually quantify as some sort of true economic impact to the county or to our taxpayers. It has a lot of really nuanced impact. So I will support the resolution tonight, but I do hope that we can take all of the steps and many more that a number of my colleagues had suggested that we take, applying a pressure to the state, applying pressure to our purveyors, and hopefully applying pressure to our community to make the right things, to put more of those bins in their house so that we can, do like Ann did in her demonstration and really sort through our trash to have as little trash as possible.
Ann Corman.
Thank you. I appreciate the robust conversation and thought about this. One thing I didn't mention was that recently the 25-mile area around this landfill touching Geneva and Auburn, this is from the Department of Health, just recently came out, 50% more lung cancer than expected. So this is now considered a cancer cluster area. There are, I don't know how many schools, but there's a number of schools in this area. So they're going to continue to study it over the next few years. Particularly hits home, as some of you know, my brother died a few weeks ago from lung cancer. Yesterday at the peak meeting, we had a presentation regarding circular economy for deconstruction of buildings. And so if people want to watch that presentation, so we have people here working in the community that are ready to go. There's models across the country for that. And again, the majority or a good portion, I can't remember the percentage, but a good portion, majority of the tonnage that goes to landfills is from buildings being demolished. And most of the tonnage that goes to this landfill is from downstate. So I don't like to often say upstate, downstate, but make people that are producing this be responsible. We should all be responsible, and I'm excited to do a lot more things here in Tompkins County. And I just wanted to ask Yvonne Taylor, if she's still on, regarding someone mentioned about testing, if she happens to know, is there testing for PFAS in the leachate, and about the other municipalities that are supporting this, because there's quite a few municipalities besides us that are, well, there's many municipalities that have already passed resolutions in support of the closure. Is Yvonne there?
I am. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate this. Seneca Meadows produces 70 million gallons of PFAS-laden leachate every year, only 1/5 of which is treated on site with a reverse osmosis system. The rest gets trucked to Buffalo, Chittenango, Steuben County, and Watertown to wastewater treatment facilities that do not have the mechanism for removing the PFAS before it goes into our drinking water and our water resources. And if I may, I would just like the opportunity to reiterate that the question keeps being made, well, what are we going to do with the waste if we don't have this behemoth landfill? Mind you, this is the largest landfill in New York State, and California would not dream of siting the largest landfill in the state in Sonoma or Napa Valley, let alone consider expanding it. What is needed is a better waste management system, and there's one that's being proposed right now that would basically be a win-win for communities across New York and for our economy, because it is a job creator. Recycling produces 9 times more jobs than trash. Composting produces 2 times as many jobs. Reuse produces 30 times more jobs than landfills. And it's far more compatible with our sustainable agriculture and tourism industry here in the Finger Lakes that supports 60,000 jobs and brings in $3 billion into New York State's economy every year. Sadly now, the birthplace of women's rights is deemed a disadvantaged community, with cancer clusters pointing, as Ann said, to the proximity of this landfill as the cause. This resolution, if passed by Tompkins County tonight, and others like it, as Ann said, we have the village and town of Skaneateles with resolutions already on the books, because Skaneateles is the primary drinking water resource for the city of Syracuse, and trucks go on both sides of Skaneateles Lake, diesel trucks en route to this landfill. We have the village of Watkins Glen with a resolution. We also have the city and the town of Geneva with a resolution already urging for the closure of this landfill. Because this resolution and others like it around the region could push New York to adopt its proposed solid waste management plan. And we have a letter that's been signed by over 40 of our state legislators also urging for the closure of this landfill, including Assemblymember Anna Kellis. So I'm a little bit more optimistic about what the state is capable of doing. We have banned fracking in New York. We have introduced the first in the nation's moratorium on cryptocurrency mining. We're a very small but very scrappy organization that has taken on David versus Goliath fights and won every single time. And it's because the Finger Lakes region remains united together and works together to protect what some have spent generations building here in New York, and that is the Finger Lakes brand. We're a world-class tourist destination, and we need to protect our clean air and our clean water for that survival. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from legislators? Deborah, is your hand up there?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yeah, I hate to prolong this, but I'm going to vote against this, and I don't want my vote to be misinterpreted. I think this landfill sucks. But I don't think people are going to stop generating garbage because we close a landfill. I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I think we ought to be looking at things we can do. For example, one of our speakers tonight said we should ban the importation of leachate into Tompkins County. That's something we can do. But I don't think weighing in on closing this landfill is going to make a particle of difference anywhere along the line in the process. I know that we frequently...
People are dense.
I'm sorry. We pass a lot of resolutions telling the state what we would like them to do or not do because it directly affects us. But this is addressed to, in part, Waterloo and Seneca Falls, and municipalities that are outside of Tompkins County. And as you all know, I have made some pretty unpopular votes based on my concept of comity, which is that we don't tell other governments what to do. The other thing I've heard people say, we need to hold the state to account to follow its own law. If the DEC can't figure out that this is not consistent with CLCPA goals, our little resolution isn't going to make a particle of difference. So for those and other reasons, I can't pass this, even though I think that the landfill sucks. Thank you.
I'll take a quick turn. I'm also voting against this for basically the same reasons Deborah just said. This will not create one less ounce of garbage in New York State. It'll shift the problem elsewhere, and with that problem will be a lot of unforeseen things, such as increased costs for other people, trucks going in other directions, possibly more gasoline used to haul garbage, etc. Any last comments before we vote? Ann.
So to me, this is a yes and. So for electrification, we didn't say, oh, we're going to wait till the grid gets all up and running and has the capacity to add all these heat pumps to houses. We didn't say that. We said we have to electrify houses. We didn't say before we banned gas fracking that, oh, we need everything else in place to be able to substitute. We did that, and it put pressure on renewables. So all of these things were coming at it from different ways. So I like people to think about that. You're trying to put pressure on the system, and by just allowing or by not passing this, we're losing this opportunity to put pressure on the DEC. And I would hope, if this was nearer our community, that all the communities around us, if we had a cancer cluster here, if we had a landfill here, and I would hope all of the communities in the Finger Lakes would stand up and support us. Thank you very much.
Are we ready to vote? Okay. All in favor? Certainly.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
No.
Mike Sigler?
No.
Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
No.
Rich John?
No.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
No.
Dan Klein?
No.
I have 7 ayes and 6 noes. Motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay, I think it's time that we take a break. It is 7:26. Let us reconvene at 7:40. Thank you.
That's the issue, right?
Okay, we are back in session. Thank you, everybody, for that robust debate we had right before the break. We are now up to staff reports. How about Lisa Holmes, County Administrator?
Thank you, Dan. I have a few updates this meeting, starting with the wonderful world of searches. The interviews for the county's Workforce Development Director position took place last week. That process is well underway, and the interview panel includes department heads. Greg Mezzi is chair of HED, and members of the Workforce Development Board, who has to vote to confirm this appointment along with the legislature. We'll be holding interviews with candidates for Chief Equity Diversity Officer tomorrow. And we have staff, department heads, community partners, and Veronica Pillar as chair of WDIC on that interview panel. A brief update on the county's strategic operations plan. Today, an email went out to community partners, municipal elected officials, and to legislators, notifying that staff from Barry Dunn, our contractor, will be getting in touch to schedule interviews. And the information gleaned from these interviews will form their initial environmental scan, where themes will likely be emerging to provide the basis for a draft strategic plan. And then finally, I wanted to mention the countywide Rapid Medical Response Pilot Program. This is a proposal that came through the Council of Governments for the county to provide support to professional EMS in the county and provide support for the volunteer municipal-based EMS system in several municipalities. The pilot program is going to be under consideration as part of the county's budget process in the coming months. However, in the meantime, there are 2 grant programs through New York State that would help to cover the costs, at least for the first year of the program, and those are the Local Government Efficiency Grant Program and the Countywide Shared Services Initiative. And the timing of these grant opportunities is such that staff need to act on them now to apply for 2024. So I wanted to make you aware that staff has been working on these grants because it's the timeline is such that we're working on them now in parallel or advance of the budget process, and that's a function of the state's timelines for these grant opportunities. So I'm happy to answer any questions about anything I've just mentioned.
Any questions for Lisa? All right, thank you. Report from our county attorney, Bill Troy.
Yes, I have 2 matters to report on. One is the case where we lost with the motorcyclist. We just got word that it's now time to make the payment, $1 million of damages payment, and that's being taken care of in the next week or 2. And the second thing is we have a court soon to issue a decision in a lawsuit against one of our deputies. I expect we should get that decision in about 2 weeks. Everything else is in status.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the county attorney? Bill. Next up, a report from Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett.
Thank you. Couple things to update you on. The auditors are still working on the year-end audit for last year. They have completed their on-site work and are off-site at this point. They're focusing on gathering the data they need to properly record the leases, which are due this year. We are continuing to work on the AUD. We are in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting for the lease information to come back to us from the auditors. If we do not have that in the next week or so, I'm going to direct them to submit the report so that we have it submitted timely with a notation on that to the state that we still have the leases information forthcoming, so that we can show that we've submitted it and let them be aware that we have more information forthcoming. And I wanted to let you know that the auction was held on June 29th, and all 7 parcels did sell. There is some information in your packet that will come up later, a spreadsheet of the sale prices on those parcels, and we have put most of that money into escrow. We kept the amount of the taxes and the recording fee, and the gain and loss and the amount of the auctioneer's fees we have put in the escrow. However, we are paying the auctioneer out of county funds at this time, waiting for further direction to come from the state. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for County Finance Director? Okay. Thank you. All right, next up is the consent agenda. We have a lot on there, a lot of words, so lean back and relax. Advisory board appointments. Start with that. Thank you, I missed something. Before we do that, resolutions added to or withdrawn from the agenda. Are there any? All right, so back to the consent agenda. Let's start with the advisory board appointments. To the Developmental Disability Subcommittee, Wala Maharam Horan, member, terms expires December 31st, 2024. Sally McConnell Janae, member, term expires December 31st, 2025. Cassidy Stanley, member, term expires December 31st, 2026. To the Tompkins County Historical Commission, Dr. Leslyn McBean Claiborne, member, term expires December 31st, 2025. Okay. And the resolutions. Resolution A from the Government Operations Committee, increase petty cash account, County Clerk, Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV, ID number 11720. Resolution B, resolution to update Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 0215, Personnel Records, ID number 11770. Resolution C. Was this one going to get pulled?
Dan had made some suggested edits to that one.
So I'm pulling it.
Yes. Well,
I'm pulling Resolution C. Thank you. Resolution D, budget adjustment, Finance Department to County Administration, Human Resources, HR, payroll position, ID number 11769. From the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution E, making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the resolution appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Cornelius addition to the Edna Preserve, ID number 11740. Resolution F, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Cornelius addition to the Edna Preserve, Nature Preserve, ID number 11741. Resolution G, making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the resolution appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Robinson Estate to create a wetland, ID number 11742. Resolution H, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Robinson Estate to create a wetland conservation area, ID number 11743. Resolution I, making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to resolution appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Thompson addition to the Cayuga Cliffs Preserve, ID number 11744. Resolution J, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the Thompson addition to the Cayuga Cliffs Preserve, ID number 11745. Resolution K, making a negative determination of environmental significance in relation to the resolution approving funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the White addition to the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve, ID number 11746. Resolution L, appropriating funds from the Tompkins County Natural Infrastructure Capital Program for the acquisition of the White addition to the Lindsay Parsons Biodiversity Preserve, ID number 11747. From the Health and Human Services Committee, Resolution M, Budget Adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, COFA, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, LTCOP, ID number 11757. From the Housing and Economic Development Committee, Resolution N, authorization to submit 2023 New York State Office of Community Renewal Community Development Block Grant Program housing application for Healthy Homes Rehab 4 program and designation of environmental review certifying officer. ID number 11763. Resolution O.
Please pull that.
You. Resolution P, authorizing funding from the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Program for 2023, Town of Ithaca, South Hill Financial Feasibility and Infrastructure Study, ID number 11775. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda? Travis Brooks moves, Ann Corman seconds. All in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry. What?
Ann, were you in favor?
That was unanimous, correct? No no's? Okay, thank you very much. We are up to standing and special committee reports, standing and special committees, reports and motions. And we will start with the Government Operations Committee. Amanda Champion, Chair.
First committee, as it should be. Okay, we met on July 6th. We had a very long and good, full of meaty tofu meeting. So a couple things to report back. I have sent you all some emails recently. Hopefully you've read those. I guess we can start with the advisory board policy that was pulled off consent. You may remember that this is the policy that Kathy and Michelle worked on for many years, Brittany and Katrina have worked on. We had a small committee of legislators who've worked on it with the goal of getting the policy in order to help the all the advisory boards and all the people and the management and the data information that the clerks have to keep straight to help that become easier for management, for data management. We have, 40, 50 advisory boards, and that's a lot of information. Hopefully the goal is with these changes, the clerks will be able to get some software to help them manage all of this. So I think it got pulled because there was a couple of just small changes which are in your red packet that we discussed at the GO meeting, but I guess didn't get into the edit, into the final result. Yeah.
I believe that the fact that the word "not" was omitted is considered substantive. I think that's basically the reason.
Yeah.
Randy.
So I can't find it now, but I read it earlier. There was a list of advisory boards that did not have to adhere to the open meeting law. Is that a change, or has that been that way before?
No, it's not a change, but maybe for the first time we're kind of defining it. Yeah, there's certain boards that, yeah, legally have to follow the open meetings law, but we want all our boards to follow our policy. Yeah.
So does that mean if I'm on an advisory board that you still have to have the quorum issues, but if somebody's on Zoom, they can still, does that not apply, or?
Yeah, I mean, technically they don't have to follow open meetings law, so.
You still have to have a quorum of board members.
Right, I don't.
Yes,
yeah.
you still have to have a quorum, and that can be defined further in their bylaws. And the resolution allows for 12 months for them to update their bylaws, and Brittany and I will work with them to get that done.
Thank you.
So we haven't moved this yet. Can we do that next?
Yeah. I mean,
Amanda's moving it. Thank you. Is there a second? Deborah, thank you. Okay, continued discussion. Ann.
Just following up on what was just said. So if they're not following open meetings law, say a liaison committee, they could have quorum virtually, if that's in their bylaws?
I'll look at them for the right answer.
Right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Greg Mezzi.
I'm on packet page 21. Is this the list that Randy was referring to of the boards considered advisory which are not required to comply with open meetings law?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, where's STPB fall?
On packet page 19.
They are required to follow the open meetings law.
Is that new?
According to this policy, yes. I think that they were moved there due to the money that goes through that they deal with, that they help distribute.
Greg, were you done?
For now.
Sure. Deborah.
Yeah, I think I understand where you might be questioning that, Greg, and I think that in the past I've had occasion to look at the advisory opinions that are rendered by the Committee on Open Government, and generally what they have said about boards is that if it's a board that can actually perform a governmental function like allocating money, then they think that the open meetings law should apply to that board. So that analysis suggests that including STPB in a list of boards that have to comply with the open meetings law makes sense given the Open Government Committee's analysis.
Do they allocate funds though, or do they not purely make recommendation for the acceptance by the legislature?
How many times do we not allocate the funds they tell us to allocate?
Because how we vote, I guess it's a...
Well, yeah.
It's a substantive question.
I guess you could argue about it. It makes sense to me.
Other discussion about Resolution C? Veronica.
I just had a couple questions that now I'm forgetting. Oh, yeah. So on packet page 19 in F3, it says if someone has whatever series of absences, the office may be deemed vacant by the action of the appointing authority for the purposes of the nomination and appointment of a successor. So I just wanted to clarify that may means like that it's not like it's not automatically vacated.
It's not shall.
Okay. And then in the bit right after that, number, oh, I said the numbers wrong. In the one about coterminous terms, maybe this doesn't apply anywhere, but if someone is appointed to an advisory board for a slot that's like for an advisory board where they're like, we have 2 county legislators and one farmer and et cetera. If you're appointed to an advisory board to fill a slot because of some other office you hold, but then you lose the other office during your advisory board term, do you like jump ship into an at-large seat or not, or what?
Yeah, I don't fully get the coterminous terms thing myself.
No,
so.
but that can be addressed further in the bylaws. But that person should resign, I would anticipate.
Yeah.
I mean, but you can address that further in the bylaws. This is kind of like an outline that we're setting up in those, because not every board has coterminous positions. So I would recommend addressing it further in bylaws.
Okay, so if this bit in the legislature policy is going to cause some kind of problem for a specific advisory board, it's up to that board to sort it out.
Further define.
Yeah, I mean, it has to still comply with what we're saying here, but they can define it or, make it work for them as best they can.
And we'll work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coterminous terms also was to apply, from my understanding, best for the mental health subcommittees that fall under the Community Mental Health Services Board. Because when someone's appointed to one of those subcommittees and they're also a board member, they try to have their expiration date, their term expiration dates be the same so that they're not reapplying like every other year for their seats on those boards.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions or comments about Resolution C? Greg?
Yeah, so just a quick question, reading through this in a little bit more detail. Using Legislator Dawson's thought process, which you referred to, how does the TC3 Board of Trustees not fall into a board not required to be part of open meetings law, since they have the ability to administer and act on funds?
Mike?
They're structured under state law, and they are subject to the open meetings law. But it's not, they aren't really an advisory board for us because they are appointed by, we have representatives appointed, Cortland has representatives appointed, and the state has representatives appointed.
So I guess why are they on the list?
I'm sorry?
Why are they on the list as an advisory board?
We appoint to them.
Interesting.
I guess you get into the issue of what is an advisory board, but that is
my issue.
This is a statutory board.
So should it be removed? Because will our bylaws, like will this policy apply to them?
Yeah.
It does,
I mean,
but it's a statutory organization.
And
yeah, I mean, some of them are a little murky. Like it's the same with the library board. You know, they fall under state education law, but we appoint their members. We have to approve their bylaws. So it's kind of both. And because our clerks do maintain all the applications and all the information, we want to have a policy where all of these boards, whether they're like technically an advisory board or they're another kind of board, whatever you want to call them, still, we want to have a policy that they all fall under. So yeah, so TC3 would have to, I mean, that I feel like would even be another negotiation because they also have to work with Cortland. So, but I'm guessing that most of the things in here they already do.
So the library board of trustees is listed as one that needs to comply with open meetings law.
Yes.
Okay.
The list, that last page there, the list, is going to be maintained separately from the policy, and I was going to post that online, but I will go ahead and check further into that one. And if we need to, we can come back and add it to the policy.
Which one?
The TC3 board.
Oh.
But I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do believe that was something that Kathy, I had worked on that list with Kathy, and that's where she had placed them, but I'll go back through the paperwork, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, and then I guess my last question is it the opinion of Bill and the county attorney that the list needing to comply with open meetings law is accurate and that no other organizations need to be included or removed from that list?
I will look at this. I'm not ready to give you an answer right now.
All right, so I guess I would maybe feel more comfortable if this potentially was postponed until the attorney could weigh in.
Amanda.
I believe that this list was generated by Jonathan and worked with Kathy on that a couple years ago. So there was a lot of discussion about, you know, who exactly this, which boards go where. Personally, I'd like to get this passed so we can move forward. I think if we need to move, you know, this board goes over here and maybe this one goes over here, I think we can still do that. But the substance of this, you know, we've been waiting a long time for this.
Veronica Pillar.
At the risk of just prolonging this, if that list of advisory boards that are not required to comply with open meetings law is not part of the policy, then to me, this list of covered entities, section G, sounds like it's saying that only those 6 public bodies are covered by this policy. And I assume that is not what we want. And so I wonder if maybe we could make a small language change to clarify this.
What would that look like?
Honestly, I might just scrap that whole section. Maybe that's not a small change.
I guess I'm not clear what you're saying. You're saying that by dividing out the two groups, it sounds like the first group is the only one that is required to follow this policy?
Yes, because of the sentence, the following is a list of advisory boards and committees that are covered by this policy. And then we have the first list with 6 items, and then what we have is we don't have a second list, we just have note. Boards considered advisory which are not required to comply with open meetings law are kept on file with the clerk of the legislature. I mean, maybe it would work to, instead of saying note, say, like give a heading that's like, boards considered advisory which are not required to comply with open meetings law, and then instead of a list, say, this list is kept on file with the clerk of the legislature.
And must still follow this policy? I guess I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just adding, they're not required to comply with open meetings law, but they are required to comply with this policy.
That also would work, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Did we get that?
Are you offering that as an amendment?
What did Amanda just say? I would say yes, I just don't know what wording I'm offering.
Let's try boards considered advisory which are not required to comply with open meetings law are required to comply with this policy, period. This list is kept on file with the clerk of the legislature.
Great, yes, I'd like to offer that as an amendment.
I'll second that.
So we're getting rid of? I know, I'm not.
I'm wondering, I know some people won't like this, I'm wondering if we should send this back to committee to work on this, because it's pretty hard to, it's a little hard up here at least to grasp what detail we're doing. If people feel differently, if we're all on board, then we can keep going. Katrina, do you feel like you know enough about this change based on the policy to feel, you do? It feels good to you? Yes. Okay. I take it back.
I think we're just saying what Veronica's suggesting is that last sentence, we're just saying
I agree
they
with
don't
what
have to.
Veronica said.
Yeah, they don't have to comply with open meetings law, but they do have to comply with this policy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I thought we were getting rid of everything before that, so, okay.
Yeah, no, don't get rid of anything, just change that last.
That makes sense then.
That last line there.
Yep.
So I guess the question is that friendly? And if it's not, do we need to vote on it?
Veronica was.
I was.
Are there any objections to that amendment? No? Okay, good. So that amendment's accepted. Thank you. Further debate on the resolution, Resolution C. Ann, just kidding. No problem. This is what we're here for. Are we ready to vote then?
I got the stink eye from Katrina, just wanted to know for the minutes.
Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor of Resolution C? Opposed? We have one opposed. That motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, Amanda, keep going.
Yeah, so the other thing that I sent an email about, and I included the chart of legislator travel and training expenses. We talked about this a bit in GO. I think we'll talk about it a little bit more at the next GO, but any public watching, if you want to know how much your legislator is spending on travel and training, it is a public document. I won't go into all the details that were discussed on email, but if folks have questions, I can answer them or try to answer them further in email. Okay. Another thing we discussed, Dominic talked to us a little bit about the technology and the screens in chambers. I hope over the past 2 weeks, everybody's had a chance to check out the loaner screen down here in the oval, which you folks on that side can't see, but I hope you've had a chance to sit on this side at some point and check it out. Dominic put together some options for moving forward with updating and fixing some of the outdated technology. At the next GEO meeting, he's going to want some direction from us on what we want to do, which option we want to go with. Very briefly, one is to do nothing and see what breaks next. Two is to take these old projectors down, install 2 screens here in the oval for both sides, a screen over there for the public, and I feel like one other screen over on this side for the public. So that had a lower cost of $15,000.
Just south of 15, yes.
Yeah. So that's one option. The other option is to try to renovate or replace these projectors and screens, which would be significantly more, up in the $30,000 to $50,000 range. So if folks want to weigh in on that, you can send me an email. You can come to the next GEO meeting. I don't know, I need to talk to Katrina if we'll need to have a resolution or if it can just be a motion and if it needs to go through the whole legislature or not, but that's something we talked about. And then the last thing that I would bring up is just the fiscal policy, which we also talked about extensively at GEO and then again at budget. We made lots and lots of changes. I think it was a good discussion. I wanted it to be as a separate item and not on the consent agenda because it is a big policy to look at and consider, and I just wanted folks to have a chance to ask questions or talk about any specifics. The one thing that stands out to me that I'll just point out is that we are suggesting raising the amount of budget transfers that would have to come back to the legislature. So right now, we'll get a resolution that says budget transfers up to over 5,000 need to come to the legislature for approval. We're suggesting changing that to 15,000. So we would be getting fewer of those coming back to us, which the committee felt like that was a reasonable change. So, but there was plenty of other things to discuss if people have questions. So I will go ahead and move that resolution.
Is there a second for Resolution Q? Deborah. Discussion. No discussion about the fiscal policy changes.
Just a clarification, not coming back to us. Actually, you'll see that the budget adjustment, just nothing is actionable.
It's information.
Actually, that's different. So we talked about this at HHS yesterday. So the things that you get at the end of an agenda that say budget transfer or for information only, those are things currently that are less than $5,000. So, and actually we learned in the policy that sort of they're for information only. They don't need to be approved by the legislature, but if the legislature or the committee doesn't like them, we can't actually send them back to the department. So it's mostly for information only. It's the resolutions that come to us that will now be over 15,000. So we probably will see more of those for information only budget adjustments. Does that make sense?
Yes, the distinction between an adjustment and a transfer. Correct?
That's correct.
Not sure.
Okay.
Maybe we are dense.
Any other discussion about the Resolution Q, the fiscal policy? All right, then let's have a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
I think that's all I have to say at the moment.
Thank you, Amanda. Next up is the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We actually had, by the magic of holidays and only one legislature meeting this month, we've had 2 peak meetings since our last meeting. I will try and keep it as succinct as I can. But I just wanted to start out by apologizing for a comment from a speaker that I asked to comment on, who made some comments later. I have an email into her about that. I'm assuming she thought she wasn't on, still on, but still, it's not, I apologize, still wasn't a nice comment. So let's see. The June 22nd meeting, we had a presentation from the group that's doing Skip the Stuff, and that's regarding all the extra utensils and napkins and things you get with takeout food. And so New York City has done an ordinance where you have to actually ask people. You can't give that out automatically. And so we're going to work on that to see if that's something that could we do here, and what would that entail. So, Greg has offered to help me a little bit in that, so thank you. Let's see, a lot of presentations. Let's see. We had the food system update from the folks from the Food System Council, and that was also followed up at HHS. They had a similar presentation, so I imagine you'll talk about that. And so thank you for steering them in the right direction, Dan. The Caswell Solar Project, which is going to be sited on one of our old landfills, is still in progress, and that's looking pretty good. Again, just looking for some highlights. We had round 2 of the Municipal Parks and Trails grant. There was $10,000 left. And so that was, they had a Department of Planning had a second round, and so they awarded those, the rest of the $10,000. And they indicated they possibly might be asking for more money next year, so we'll see. And one of the biggest things, well, two things, both have to do with our Recycling and Materials Management Department. And we've been getting updates on the Rethinking Waste in Tompkins County, fostering a local circular economy. So that has to do with our new 10-year plan for the department. And so we're going to get an update next legislature meeting about that, so that we can have, so thanks Dan for asking about that, so we can have more information, because that's a big deal. It's our 10-year plan on that. There was a public hearing they had July 11th at the library that was well attended, and Veronica and I went to that. One of the biggest things I will say with that was some misinformation. Well, I guess it was something in the plan that wasn't accurate, or the draft plan wasn't accurate. So that was corrected. It was about biosolids from the, I believe, Cayuga Heights wastewater treatment system, because as we know, if you, from all the comments earlier, biosolids can often, almost always, I guess, contain PFAS and some other toxic residue. So the discrepancy was, were they still taking those biosolids and having them be spread somewhere on farmland? And that is not the case anymore. And hopefully that will not be in our plan. And that is open to comment, the plan, the draft plan, up until August 7th. So please take a look at that. It's about 100 pages, but maybe after our presentation on the 1st of August, it'll give you enough that you might want to email some comments to them. And let's see, we had a presentation, let me go back first off to the solid waste. We talked about restructuring the solid waste annual fees for universities, colleges, and similar institutions. We had quite a long discussion about that, and I want to thank the people that have been working on that to try and figure out what are the next steps, as far as equity on that. And Lisa and Norma are going to follow up with some more discussions with the universities and colleges. Does that sound about right? No. Okay, thank you for doing that. And lastly, we had a presentation, as I mentioned before, on it's called CROWD, and it's the Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development, and that's regarding recirculating, reusing building materials rather than just demolishing them. And there are several organizations around the country that are already doing this. Several municipalities have already figured out a way to do this, although they're fairly new in the last few years. So hopefully we can learn from that and figure out what we can do here locally. And our next meeting is sometime in August.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions for Ann Corman? Mike Lane.
And there were 4 resolutions for grant money to be distributed to Finger Lakes Land Trust for properties they want to purchase and have conservation easements on. All seem very worthy of what they want to do. Reading over the various seeker statements on that and the summaries, I'm wondering about protection for flooding in these areas along the creek, and in particular something called high-risk trees. And you may not know the answer to this, but I would certainly like to be able to find out from somebody. Are there provisions where municipalities may go in these areas and remove high-risk trees, which are trees that are likely to fall into the creeks during flooding and be washed downstream and damage or block up bridges and culverts?
So can municipalities do that?
Well, that's who you would be most likely to have to go in there, and that's what's happened in flooding situations in the past. Municipalities have had to go in.
Okay, I'll look into. You're right. I do not know the answer.
I just
I'll look into that.
That's the one thing that occurred to me because that might not be a way you can keep it pristine, but which is something that we really need to think about for the protection in flooding events.
Thank you. But if I could add one thing that you brought up there, some of these parcels having to do with protecting wetlands help protect us from flooding, because if there's more development in those areas.
Yep. And I understand that, but I'm talking about when we get a flood event.
Right, particularly. So I'll look into that. And I did ask, because it was brought up at one of the first meeting that we had since we last met, the first peak meeting, was regarding for the natural infrastructure grants. One of the projects passed had to do with more recreation versus land protection, and so we asked the planning department to put that on their next year's work plan because that had been talked about before, I guess, as the legislature about can we also protect areas for recreation, and so they're going to look at that next year.
Any other questions for Ann? Great, thank you, Ann. For the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, that committee has not met since the last time the legislature met. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 7th, and it's still tentative. There may not be enough to meet about. I suspect we probably will meet, and I want to be optimistic and say that they are relatively small, relatively easy decisions that we're going to have to make. And they have to do with, it's hard to characterize, just some minor changes, some individual circumstances with individual applicants. But I will let the committee know as soon as it has been determined, it should be next week, whether or not we're going to need that August 7th meeting. So keep it on your calendar for now. Any questions about the Recovery Fund Committee? All right. Next up is Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, we met a week ago yesterday, I think. Yeah. And part of our discussion was, of course, the fiscal policy, but since there was considerable overlap between the membership of GO and BCP, and I think the one person who wasn't on both committees was Lee, and he graciously attended the GO meeting. We didn't have a lot left over to debate about the fiscal policy. One of the things we learned in the course of reviewing the fiscal policy is that we actually have a mandate contingent fund, which apparently we don't use all that often, but given what Albany's done to us lately, I think we might need it a lot more now and in the future. So that brings me to the resolution to increase the mandate contingent fund, Doc ID 11782, and I would move that now.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mike Lane?
So you will all recall, Lisa informed us that we got a pleasant surprise in the form of $2.8 million for Department of Social Services expenses dating back to, 2021, yeah. So given that we got this windfall, and we are also being saddled with unfunded mandates in a pretty large amount this year and going forward, Admin and Finance suggested that we put that money in the mandate contingent fund. That's what this resolution would do.
Randy?
Yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do to put that in a contingent fund. Is that an assigned fund? I mean, I'm trying. There's many categories you went through of funds. Is this a reserve? Is it a committed? Is it an assigned fund?
I'm going to let Lori deal with that question.
So it's none of the above.
This too. Right?
Yeah. So your mandate contingency works the same as your regular contingency. It's a budgetary expenditure. So we're going to fund that. Right now, it's currently sitting in a deferred revenue account and with a bazillion other deferred revenues that the county has received for various purposes. So we're going to separate that out into a separate deferred revenue account that sits on a balance sheet item, is a balance sheet item. And then as you either choose to spend that money out of the budget, out of your mandate contingency budget, we'll move that money over. But it's sitting in a balance sheet account.
Okay.
So it's not a reserve, it's not an assigned
It's not
fund
restricted. I think
Yeah, I'm
that's
just trying to understand.
the question. Yeah.
There's a lot of terms I didn't even know existed, so thank you for that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
On a separate thing, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and they predicted that New York State revenues could drop 20% by the end of the decade. So,
Yeah, and that brings us back to the warnings that Mike gave us in public comment. So be cautious, people. Anyhow, but that's beside the point. We have a resolution.
Okay, any other questions or comments about Resolution S? Ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We also had a really eye-opening and comprehensive presentation from Lori about fund balances of various and sundry kinds. I sent everyone a copy of her PowerPoints, and I also sent you a link to the YouTube with the time. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that yet, I really commend it to your attention. And I think that we will be taking up potential amendments to our current fund balance policy in the next month or two of BCP meetings. Another thing that we will be looking at, thanks to a question that Randy sent me, is formalizing our existing cash management and investment policy, which is something that Rick Snyder had presented to us at BCP many months ago. But I didn't realize that that had never been passed, adopted by resolution, and included in our administrative policy manual. So it makes sense to do that. If we can manage to pass a fiscal policy, a fund balance policy, and an investment policy all in 1 year, I will consider that it's been a banner year for BCP, and I want to thank everybody on the committee. So that's it.
Any other questions or comments for Deborah? All right. Oh, Veronica Pillar.
Thanks. Just a comment that Lori's presentation really was phenomenal and helpful. I watched it at the time, but I'll probably watch it again.
Yeah, I think I'm going to watch it again, too, because there was a lot in there.
All right. We are moving on then to Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee met on June 28th. We had, I guess, three main things. One, a general discussion about accessibility as an aspect of inclusion that we're going to try to, or we will include as a consistent topic to check in with in our meetings going forward. We really fleshed out what's going to be happening with the Leslyn McBean Claiborne Strength and Diversity Award going forward. And I think sometime this week you should see nomination forms go out for that. Still futzing with the admin. And yeah, spread the word. I'll send an email. And we are also in the process of finding a selection committee that's going to choose the recipients of the award, so it won't be WDIC directly. Also, hopefully this week we're going to put out a much lighter level of nomination forms internal to the county for people to suggest colleagues who should be recognized for living out one of the county values. We already have those cards to send private recognitions, but gonna lift this up publicly as a way to do some public employee recognition. If people want, get more posters made with new photos of new folks. And hopefully have this as just one more tool in the toolbox to get the values penetrating through the organization. This is not new, but I'll note that we still have one vacancy on WDIC now that we have made the number of members a specific number as per our new advisory board policy. And so if you know anyone interested, send them our way. Our next meeting is going to be August 16, Wednesday, 3 to 5 p.m. That's a week earlier than we would normally have it because of the employee picnic on August 23rd.
Questions for Veronica Pillar? Great, thank you. Next up, Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. The Public Safety Committee will be meeting this Thursday at 3 o'clock here in Chambers. So that's July 21st. I just have a couple items that I wanted to make the legislature aware of. We're going to have a presentation from a couple representatives from URO, Ultimate Reentry Opportunities, talking about reentry from jail and prison in our community. We will have a short presentation from the executive director of the Suicide and Crisis Prevention organization on 988, because it's been in place for just about a year and wanted to get some sense of how it's working. And our sheriff will be giving a presentation on the GIVE grant that we were successful in obtaining. This is the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Grant that New York State has awarded us. I believe it's in the neighborhood of $380,000, and how that will be applied. And then I also just wanted to mention the jail working group with Travis as the chair has continued to meet. We met last Thursday, was it? And we're close to having a report prepared for the legislature. Finally, our jail numbers are still remaining fairly high by the trends, with 69 in the jail with 2 board outs. happy to try to answer any questions.
Rich John. All right, thank you, Rich. Next up is Health and Human Services Committee. I have a little report that I'd like to read. Health and Human Services Committee met yesterday, July 17th. We had 2 presentations. One was by Sarah Paradiso from the Tompkins County Food Distribution Network, and as Ann Corman mentioned, she had previously presented at the Peak Committee. The Tompkins County Food Distribution Network is a consortium of 27 food organizations in Tompkins County. Sarah presented information about how the increased demand for food combined with the increased price of food has caused the Food Distribution Network to project that they will run out of money this year. So in the short term, the organization is requesting $54,000 in extra funding from the county this year. That request is being handled through the Human Services Coalition, and we will hear more about that next month. In the longer term, the Food Distribution Network is exploring ways to increase their capacity as an organization to handle the projected ongoing increased need for food distribution. The organization is currently run by volunteers, so increasing capacity probably involves establishing a paid position. The second presentation at our committee was from Whole Health, from staff members Brenda Crosby and Deb Thomas. They presented information about some serious issues with the early intervention program is facing. This federally mandated program provides services such as speech, physical, and occupational therapy to children under 3 years of age. The science behind this is that many potential issues are correctable if they are addressed at a young age. The program contracts with outside service providers, and those providers are leaving the program in droves. This is a statewide problem. Service providers are leaving due to low pay and better opportunities elsewhere. The New York State Legislature passed an 11% salary increase for providers, but the governor did not include that in her 2023 budget. The Department of Whole Health is exploring a number of ways to address the issue, but it is likely going to take action from New York State to make meaningful changes. The next meeting, the Health and Human Services Committee, will be August 21st, where we'll have a presentation from the Child Development Council. Are there any questions or comments? Deborah?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. This $54,000, is that being requested for fiscal year 2023?
Yes.
And so we can anticipate that there's also going to be a big ask for 2024.
I think that's fair to say, some kind of ask, but there may be other things in play here. It's a little hard to say for sure right now.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, did you want to add to that at all, or good enough? Okay. Ann?
I just wanted to add, we don't typically give them money, so we don't know if this is going to be a further ask of the county or not. But I know you asked them, are they exploring other options for that funding too? Because this is new.
They do get money through the Human Services Coalition, which is our, arguably our money as well. So this is on top of that.
Okay.
Through the annual budget process, through the Human Services Coalition, the Food Pantry Network is one of several agencies that receive funding through the county.
Okay. I wasn't aware they already do through HS. Okay.
Randy.
Yeah, in their report, they actually mentioned that 3 of the food banks were already out of money locations. And so I met with them through the Food Policy Council, Katie Hallis and Baz Perry, and thank you for helping me weave through that. I didn't know where to send them, so letting them go through the Human Service Coalition was helpful. Human Service Coalition mentioned they have maybe up to $25,000 in a contingent fund that may be able to help them. So they're working directly with them on that request. So thanks for your advice on that. So.
Thank you, Randy.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. Moving on to the Housing and Economic Development Committee. Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you. If I could move Resolution O ID 11768. This is the as amended by the Housing and Economic Development Committee Award of Arts and Culture Organization Development Stabilization and Recovery Fund.
Seconded by Ann Corman. It's in your red folder. Go ahead, Greg.
The reason this was pulled off of the consent agenda was procedural, because there was a very minor change in putting the total amount of 565 in the last line of the second and last line of the resolve, which is the total of the box. So because this was provided in the agenda packet pending committee approval, because there was a change, that's why it was pulled from the agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions about this. Just to remind folks that this was additional tourism dollars that were collected, that we approved the budget adjustment for a couple of months ago, and then the existing arts and the ACOD recipients, arts and culture, organizational development funded groups were eligible to apply. A number of them did, a few decided not to, and based on their applications, this is the awards that were being recommended to the legislature.
Questions or comments on this resolution? Are we ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for that. I know that there's a lot of folks in our community that are looking forward to getting the relief in that sector of our community. We last met on 7/14, July 14th. There was a change from our originally scheduled date because of the 4th of July holiday and not coming back right from the 4th of July to July 5th meeting. So we met on the 14th. We had a presentation from the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce, where we got a Chamber and Chamber Foundation update from Jennifer Tavares. Learned a lot about their micro enterprise assistance program and the success of that this past round. There's a whole presentation that was done, also the community conversations that they're doing around our community, taking conversations to every corner of the county and trying to engage with elected officials, members of the business community, and members of the public on ways that life and things could be improved or changed within sort of their micro community as it relates to their specific area. We also had a presentation from Megan Barber from CAPS, the Community Arts Partnership, a little bit of a progress report. If you can remember last year during the budget process, we provided them with OTR in the amount of about $120,000 to support local community-based arts programming. That money was leveraged to also get some NISCA funds, the New York State Council of the Arts, to create a total grant pool of about $230,000. This was
100% match.
Yeah, it was quite almost 100% match. There was a 109% increase in the number of requests. So in 2022, they had a pool of 60,000. So sorry, this was a 282% increase in funding available to these organizations. So far, they've distributed 63 grants, and they expect in their second cycle to about 30 requests. Average grant size is about $2,500. 31% of these programs involve youth and the youth in our community. 31% are for rural programming. And then again, 33% of the programs targeted to the BIPOC communities. There's 3 grant pools. There's grants for the arts programming. There's arts in community grants, and then there's arts as education grant. And Megan really put a nice presentation together so that we could see the impact of these OTRs, which I know a number of us have asked for, to see when we get these specific requests from organizations, what's the data coming back to us to show the success and to show where these organizations or which organizations are receiving these funds. So I would encourage you to either look at the agenda or check out the meeting for more of an update there. And then two other things. We had a tourism program budget, I guess I'll call it a primer, because we will see it again in the budget cycle. But this was what was presented, what was passed by the Strategic Tourism Planning Board as a recommendation to the county administrator in preparation for the county administrator's recommended budget. We are forecasting in 2024 a room tax of about $4.4 million. Which is a good jump that we continue to see. There was a lot of conversation around our reserve funds, which was spurred out of some of the conversation that we had previously within the legislature. The budget that's being proposed has a 12.8% reserve, up from 10%. So that's about 440-some thousand, or a little bit more than that. That would end up in reserve. And there was discussion about looking at the 2023 budget and a potential surplus being created again because of when the 2023 budget was created, that looking at the surplus policy that STPB works within, potentially increasing that reserve even more, not budgeting for a large increase, but potentially using any surplus from 2023 to further grow that reserve in the efforts of creating a self-sustaining, budget program. And Lori, if I'm saying something out of line or incorrectly, please correct me. But that's, I think, the intent is to look at growing reserves through any potential surplus from this year. So you can see that, and you can see the recommended budget in the agenda packet that was out there. So if there's any questions, happy to entertain those now. If not, that concludes my report.
Questions for Greg Mezzi? Okay, thank you, Greg. Next up, Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
We will meet again on July 20th. That's this Thursday at 9:00 a.m. We will be talking about issues like our fleet management agreement, which we will be talking about to see if that can improve our fleet management, naturally. We'll be talking about the quarterly highway capital status report at the Highway Department, and we'll be talking about authorizing the award of bid for the airport for taxiway improvements. Glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Mike?
Randy, anything?
All right. Thank you, Mike. Next up, individual member filed resolutions. We have Resolution T submitted by Legislature Champion. Do you want to move that?
I would like to move that, yes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Travis Brooks.
And I think this is member filed because it didn't quite get to GO on time, but I'll turn to Lori if there's anything you want to say about it.
So yes, I apologize. I was unaware it was supposed to go to GO, so I missed that. But we wanted to get it through to the ledge tonight because that is what we told the bidders that bid on the property, that we would be taking it through tonight so that they could proceed with purchasing that property. And as I mentioned earlier, we did sell all 7 properties. And on the spreadsheet, it shows you that your total revenue for the county was $178,000, of which we put $111,000 away in escrow, and that's not counting the parcel that's sold for the city. Any questions on that?
Any other questions about the resolution? Ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Rich, John.
With your indulgence, if I could just give a brief report on the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, which met last week, and some highlights of the meeting. We considered 2 projects. We approved a project called The Citizen at 602 West Buffalo Street. This is at the location of the former Joe's Restaurant. And that is approved to be an 80-unit market rate development. It'll have 27 parking places, and that's probably will commence construction, I believe, this fall. We also received an initial application for a project at 510 West State Street called the Stately, which I think is a pretty interesting development. This is a 57-unit affordable housing project, supportive housing, and it's got different segments for different types of supports. It's in connection with Catholic Charities and a not-for-profit located out of state that I can't remember the name of as I sit here. But I also note that this project has $100,000 from the Community Housing Development Fund. So the money that the IDA has been obtaining from developers is starting to move through and to be applied against specific projects. So this is pretty exciting, I think, that we're seeing it actually working. But we're going to go to public hearing on the Stately, it's called, and see what kind of public comment we get. Happy to try to answer any questions.
Ann Corman.
I just wanted to add, as Rich just said, the public hearing for the Stately project is Thursday, the 3rd of August at 1 p.m. And you can go, let's see, on how do you get the Zoom link for that? Or is it just in person people can come?
I think I don't know if there's a Zoom link. Don't know.
People can go in person.
You can submit written comments as well.
You can submit written, and they can come in person to the IDA, 119 East Seneca Street, Suite 200, and I'll try and be there.
There was a link for the last public hearing, so I don't know if that means.
What's that?
There was a link for the last public hearing.
Was there a link?
On the Citizen, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Then there should be a publication with the link on it, and.
Just thinking of people have asked us to get the word out more, so.
We've certainly had requests that we should be trying to make those public hearings more accessible, so thank you for bringing it up.
So if anybody from the public's looking for that link, they can look at Ithaca Area Economic Development, they could contact the legislature, they could call up Rich John at his home.
Absolutely.
Just knock on his door.
Yeah.
And I'll say I don't know, but send them to IAED, yes.
Okay. Mike Lane.
Rich, just want to point out, I may have said this before, but apparently the city is going to let them tear down the historic Joe's Restaurant complex down there and replace it with a big box apartment building.
We did have some conversation about that, and that is a trade-off. This is a iconic restaurant from years and years. I think it was opened perhaps in the 1930s.
I think so.
Yeah. So it's sorry to see that go, but it has been closed and unused for several years now. And yeah, that's change.
No more bottomless salad. In the iteration that I used to go to, they had a bottomless salad. Any other questions or comments about the IDA? Mike?
I think the public comments are on the box building. This is great, by the way. I don't know who that was, but it was terrific.
An architectural genius. No doubt.
Yes, perhaps.
Mr. Sigler did attend the public hearing and spoke eloquently about the importance of beauty in our architecture.
Yeah. I echoed your sentiment, Michael. So.
Okay, we are moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting from June 20th, 2023. Is there somebody that would move those minutes? Greg Mezzi moves. Deborah Dawson seconds. Any discussion about the minutes? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any unfinished business? Okay. In accord with Article 7, Section 105 of the Public Officers Law, we will enter into executive session for the discussion of collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, and the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Is there somebody that would move to go into executive session? Deborah moves, Travis seconds. Any discussion? Everyone in favor of going to executive session? No, opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll take about a 5-minute break and come back in executive session. We do not expect to take any action when we come out.
Baker speak a little bit.